Chapter 81. What's your surname? Little Xiao crossed her legs, and her gaze turned even colder as she stared at the woman. These people were truly interesting. They didn't look like fools, so how could they not know how to conduct themselves? There were so many boxes displayed in front of her house that it would make people green with envy, but wasn't it a little too unsightly to directly rob them? Even robbers didn't need to be so arrogant, right? Moreover, who told them that things in Arbor's hands could be so easily snatched? Previously, there were so many vicious people who wanted to snatch the heart of paradise from her, but not a single one of them managed to get away with it. Yet this pair of mother and daughter, who were so weak that they couldn't even truss up a chicken, wanted to learn from others and snatch things? They should take a pail of water and look in the mirror to see if they were so shameless. Madame Nayli looked at Arbor in embarrassment. She didn't expect that this child really didn't recognize her. You, child, your words are too unpleasant. According to seniority in the clan, I'm your second aunt. As she said this, she forced a smile on her face and pulled over Xiao Chun, who was groaning and standing up angrily. She coughed dryly and said, "This is your older sister Chun. Haven't you seen each other since you were young? Perhaps you were too young back then and forgot. We're all relatives of your family. Where's your father and mother? Have them come out for a while." There were so many silks, fabrics, and jewelry. No matter what, a portion should be given to the mother and daughter, right? They were all relatives of the same family, and they were such close villagers. It wouldn't be right if they didn't share some with the mother and daughter, right? As Madame Nayli thought this, she put on a fake smile and retracted the anger on her face. She then gently pinched her daughter's palm, telling her to restrain her anger as well. But how could Xiao Ingchun restrain her anger? She had never suffered such grievances in her life. She was kicked to the ground by Arbor, and her posture was so ugly that she almost didn't want to recall it. With so many villagers watching her make a fool of herself, how could she calm down the anger in her heart? Mom. Xiao Ingchun tugged at her mother's elbow and glared at Arbor angrily. Why are you being so polite to her? Take the things away. There's no need to waste words with her. Arbor chuckled and glanced at the dumbstruck workers. What are you waiting for? Why aren't you carrying the box into the courtyard? Are you waiting to be robbed? Yes. The leading waiter waved his hand. Move it. A group of people came forward to unload the goods, moving the boxes of fine satin to Arbor's courtyard. Xiao Ingchuan's eyes were about to shoot out a venomous glint. Who knew where she got the courage from? But she actually rushed up and hugged the chest in one of the shop assistant's hands, fighting back and forth with him. Let go, let go. Where are you taking my clothes? Let go of me. The clerk looked embarrassed and looked in the direction of Arbor for help. Young Mississippi, why are you being so polite to bandits? Arbor smirked and waved his hand. Just beat them out of here. Yes. With Arbor's words, the shop assistants no longer hesitated. When they saw Madame Nayli and her daughter rushing up to grab the chest in a frenzy, they didn't hold back anymore. Madame Nayli and her daughter were both ordinary people, so how could they win against the shop assistants with round waists and thick arms? Madame Nayli's head bumped into a tree, and she shrieked as she touched the blood dripping from her forehead. Xiao Ingchun fell to the ground in a sorry state. She clutched her leg and bawled loudly, "Want my life! Want my life!" Madame Nayli also responded by wailing like a ghost and howling like a wolf. Miss Qiao killed someone, killed someone. Chapter 82. What are you waiting for? Continue to move. Don't take these people's cries seriously. Arbor indifferently swept a glance at the workers, then his disdainful gaze swept past the crying mother and daughter pair sitting on the ground. When Madame Li saw the surrounding villagers pointing at them and laughing at them, she couldn't help but feel embarrassed. She got up from the ground and pounced toward Arbor's courtyard like a hungry tiger. Stop her, Arbor sternly shouted. The two workers guarding the courtyard's entrance raised their arms and blocked Madame Li's path. Madame Li pushed their arms and scratched and kicked them. Xiao Zhongbong, Wei Ziqin, come out. I want the old madam to be the judge of this. We're all relatives, so is there a need to take things to such extremes? Wei Ziqin ran out when she heard the commotion at the courtyard's entrance. No matter how much she wanted to ignore it, she couldn't completely pretend to be deaf and mute. Wei Ziqin couldn't help but nervously wipe her hands when she saw Madame Li acting like a lunatic. She looked up at her daughter. Xiaomu returned her a reassuring gaze before saying faintly, "Mom, don't mind them. I, your daughter, bought these things with real gold and silver. I earned them by risking my life to guide you through Hulun Mountain." Wei Ziqin panicked at the mention of Hulun Mountain. She recalled how her daughter had led the Tiandao sect's people up the mountain that day, and how she had been on tenterhooks waiting at the foot of the mountain. Her heart couldn't help but tighten. She nodded and said, "Mother knows." She turned to face the two workers blocking the way and said to Madame Li, "Second sister-in-law, our family's Jojo risked his life to buy these goods. As parents, we can't ask our daughter to take these things. In other words, outsiders shouldn't even think about it." Madame Li was so angry that her eyes turned red. She shouted, "How can you say that? What are you talking about? Look at how your courtyard can barely fit these boxes. What's wrong with sharing a few with us? We are all relatives of the clan. Do you really have to be so ridiculous as to disown your own family? Second sister-in-law, these are all things that Jojo exchanged for with his life. She has the right to use them." Wei Ziqin said with a serious face, "Second sister-in-law's family has always been well off. They don't have to worry about food and clothing. I don't think they would extend their hands so far to my daughter." This Madame Li usually flaunted her family's wealth and happiness in front of the villagers. Who would have thought that she would actually do such a shameless act of robbery today? Many of the villagers who saw this secretly laughed in their hearts. Madame Li's lips trembled as she watched the boxes being carried away in front of her eyes. Her heart felt like it was about to bleed. It was true that her family was wealthy, but she had never been so extravagant and wasteful. She bought hundreds of boxes of clothes and satin. As for those expensive jewelry, she didn't even want to think about it. It was already good enough that she could add a few silver jewelry every year. Madame Li was so angry that she felt dizzy. Xiao Yingchun stared at Arbor's back and screeched, "Jewelry box, my jewelry box." Arbor ignored the two of them and directly carried the rosewood box into the courtyard. Accompanying him was a little servant girl who followed suit. She couldn't be bothered to waste her breath with these two idiots. She didn't really like the jewelry the nouveau riche crown prince gave her, and she didn't have the hobby of wearing it on her head like a peddler. However, this didn't mean that she, Arbor, would allow others to take advantage of her Arbor's things. Especially those idiots. It was even more impossible. Chapter 83. Madame Li didn't have a good time in Arbor, so she angrily dragged her wailing daughter and rushed towards Su Jiao's house in a spurt of energy. She didn't believe that Su Jiao wouldn't be envious and covetous when she found out that there were so many good things in Arbor's house. At that time, with Su Jiao leading the way, the mother and daughter pair following behind, they would definitely be able to snatch some good things back. However, if that box of jewelry fell into Su Jiao's hands, there was no guarantee that they wouldn't be able to get some back. The more Madame Li thought about it, the more pain she felt. However, she couldn't hold back the anger in her heart and went straight to Su Jiao's house. As soon as she entered the courtyard and called out, "Big sister Su Jiao," a basin of dog blood splashed onto her head. Madame Li was immediately dumbstruck. The delicate Miss Xiao Yingchuan's cheeks were also stained with 2 drops of dog blood, and she immediately shrieked as if she had been stained with some corrosive liquid. She covered her face with one hand and continuously smeared the blood, her eyes revealing a terrified expression. Madame Li was also shocked. When she focused her eyes, she saw an incense burner table in the courtyard, and 3 fist-thick incense candles were lit in broad daylight. A middle-aged Taoist priest was waving his peachwood sword in front of the table and jumping up and down while reciting with conviction, "Immortal venerables and heavenly monarchs command the world, demons and ghosts should quickly disperse." Roar. Huh. Madame Li. What kind of situation was this? Su Jiao was curled up behind the incense burner table, wrapped in a blanket on a hot day. She looked over with a pale face, her eyes unfocused. She then saw that there were several dozen yellow talismans pasted on her blanket. Her hands, feet, and even her forehead were covered in talismans. She looked extremely strange, as if she was possessed. When Madame Li saw that the situation wasn't good, She immediately grabbed her daughter's hand and hastily escaped from the courtyard without even greeting Xiao Zhongheng. She then walked toward the elderly lady's house next door. Unlucky. Who knew if the demonic aura on Su Jiao's body would spread to them? For safety's sake, they should stay as far away as possible. No wonder Su Jiao didn't go to Arbor's house to snatch things today. It turned out she was possessed and couldn't go out. However, elderly lady was also strange today. Su Jiao's home was connected to elderly lady's home, so it was impossible for elderly lady not to hear any commotion when Su Jiao had already caused such a ruckus. Madame Li held her daughter's hand and, with a head full of dog blood, chatted with the gatekeeper for a long time before finally entering the matriarch's home. Madame Li inquired about the matriarch's condition and found out that the matriarch had been sick since last night. Madame Li came to a sudden realization. She was wondering why elder Lady Qiao, with her mean and greedy personality, would not act upon hearing the news. So it turned out that she was as unlucky as Su Jiao. One was possessed while the other fell ill. Madame Li pulled her daughter to the matriarch's room. She didn't even wait for the old maidservant to finish announcing her arrival. Madame Li howled, "Io, my old lady," and rushed into the room. Madame Li lay in front of the matriarch's bed and howled loudly, but she didn't shed a single tear. The old lady was so angry that she felt dizzy on the spot. "I'm not dead yet, so what are you howling for?" Madame Li's howling caused the originally sickly matriarch to feel uncomfortable all over. She angrily reprimanded, "Shut up! What exactly happened?" Madame Li embellished the story of how the Arbor family moved the chests and baskets. As she spoke, she paid attention to the matriarch's expression. However, she saw that the matriarch's expression was very calm, as if she didn't care about those goods at all. The sky was really going to rain red soon. Elder lady was actually so strange today. Shouldn't she have jumped up on the spot and gone to Arbor's house to snatch the goods? How could elder lady Qiao be calm? She was so angry that she almost fainted. However, the Arbor family had separated last night, so no matter how much she wanted to extend her hand, she couldn't reach out to her granddaughter who had separated from them. After hearing Madame Li's instigation, elder Lady Qiao suppressed her belly full of anger. She frowned and persuaded Madame Li with a few words before impatiently sending Madame Li back to wash off the dog blood on her body. The smell of dog blood almost made her vomit. When Madame Li saw that the matriarch had actually given up on such a large amount of property, she immediately felt that it was a bit inconceivable. When she was sent out by the matriarch, Madame Li kept muttering about strange things. Thinking about how she had been running around for so long and hadn't received a single benefit, Madame Li's heart was filled with anger. She saw a hollow green stone vase standing by the matriarch's door and reached out to hold it in her arms. The matriarch, who was sending her off, was dumbstruck. Madame Li held the vase and muttered, "Old madam, then I'll be leaving first. Take care of yourself." She pulled her dissatisfied daughter and walked out of elder Lady Qiao's courtyard. The matriarch turned around and told elder Lady Qiao. The matriarch was so angry that she smashed a cup on the spot. This long-lived woman really didn't let go of any opportunity to pluck feathers from a goose. She didn't even let go of the vase at the door. Chapter 84. Disregarding how Madame Li was running around, Xiaomu happily ordered people to move the items into the courtyard, neatly piling them up one by one according to category. "There's nothing for you to do here." Arbor's eyes lit up as she scanned the hundreds of boxes. She turned and waved at Aoyi like she was shooing away flies. "Go back. Little master, this subordinate has already reported to you. From today onwards, this subordinate will follow little master closely." Xiaomu grumpily rolled her eyes at him and waved her small hand in front of his face. "Why would I want you to follow me closely? It's a waste of food, and I have to get you a room to stay in. You can see for yourself that our yard is so small. We can't fit you. It would take a lot of effort, and she would have to waste her breath if there were people by her side at all times. Look, just like now. Originally, she had sent these people away and could already count the resources on her own. Now that they were here, how was she going to take out the heart of paradise to open the mystic realm? She was so angry. She didn't want to talk at all. The little fellow glared at Aoyi like a tiger eyeing its prey. She gestured with her chin toward the door, implying that he should get lost. Aoye's mouth twitched. He quickly took out a purse embroidered with gold thread and presented it to her with both hands. This is my room and board for the next 3 years. Don't worry, little master. I don't need a room to stay in. I can stay anywhere in the yard. A bowl of rice is enough. Xiaomu naturally confiscated Aoye's money pouch and opened it to take a look. There were many small gold pellets and round, shiny little gold beans. Other than that, there were also many colorful gemstones. Adding them all together, there were at least 10,000 taels of silver. Not to mention 3 years, it was probably enough to cover 30 years of expenses. Arbor glanced at Aoye and sized him up. She nodded and waved her hand again. Aoye immediately understood and cupped his hands. Don't worry, little master. I'll be nearby. If little master needs anything, just call me. After saying this, he leaped up the eaves with a whoosh and soon disappeared. Xiaohu, who was standing at the entrance of the yard and blocked by the boxes, was so shocked that his jaw dropped. Her eldest sister was too amazing. She actually had to pay for the food and lodging of a subordinate. This was too exaggerated. At this time, the servant girl, who had been following Arbor without making a sound, also ran forward. She took out a bag of golden pellets and golden beans from her bosom and presented it to Arbor with both hands. Young master, this servant's name is Xiao Yao. I know a thing or two about washing clothes, cooking, combing hair, and makeup. This servant can sleep in the front yard, the firewood shed, and the haystack. A bowl of white rice is enough for me. The corners of Arbor's mouth twitched. He opened his money pouch and took out 2 small gold ingots, handing them to the little girl. Go buy groceries. Tycoon Crown Prince really put in a lot of effort. He even prepared food and accommodation for the 2 of them. Arbor was speechless for a moment. Her subordinate was so considerate. How could she, as the master, endure it? He was too embarrassed to push her out. Xiao Xiao walked to the box with her little paws behind her back. She turned around and shouted at the empty courtyard. Aoye, do you know how to drive a carriage? Yes. Little master. Aoye's face was full of tears. Little master wanted him to be a carriage driver for the rest of his life. Brother Xiaohu, help me guard the entrance. Don't let anyone in. I'll put all of these into my inner world. Arbor waved his little hand at Xiaohu, who was standing at the entrance of the courtyard but couldn't enter. Xiaohu immediately responded and turned to stand outside the courtyard, closing the door behind him. Chapter 85. Arbor immediately took a cursory look at the boxes and realized that the nouveau riche crown prince was indeed quite reliable. There were more than 10 boxes of ready-made clothes for all 4 seasons, shoes, and hats, enough for their family to wear for a while. Other than that, there were 70 to 80 boxes of high-quality materials, thick, thin, silk, and velvet. There was really everything that one could think of. Coupled with more than 10 boxes of silk, threads of various colors, even if mother wanted to cut and make clothes herself, she wouldn't have to worry. It was indeed enough to wear for 20 years. Heh. She had only said it casually. She didn't expect that the crown prince would really take care of everything for her. Arbor sat on one of the boxes and used her mystic senses to sense the surroundings before taking the heart of paradise out of her mouth. She didn't want to say anything after fighting with the sapling. It was simply tiring. If it weren't for the fact that there were too many boxes here and they took up a lot of space, she would have hated that she couldn't use a storage talisman. That way, she wouldn't have to fight with that strange tree every time. After snatching the heart of paradise, Xiaomu deliberately used her mystic conscience to sweep over the tree. However, she saw that it was drooping its branches and swaying pitifully, as if it was complaining about her tyrannical power. Heh. This heart of paradise was hers, all right? Damn it. It took so much effort to take it out every time. How could she endure it? How infuriating. Arbor injected a strand of mystic energy into the heart of paradise. The pearl leaped and released a strange light. A translucent valley instantly appeared in midair. With a thought, the dozens of boxes at her feet quickly entered the paradise and were neatly placed in the open space in front of the peach forest. Arbor tried to take out one of the boxes. She only needed a little mystic energy to quickly summon the box. This time, she was completely at ease. She quickly moved the remaining boxes into the paradise. The ready-made clothes, shoes, hats, and other materials were placed separately so that they could be used in the future. After that, Arbor threw 30 boxes of iron arrows, 10 crow gold arrows, crow repeating crossbows, and ordinary repeating crossbows into the paradise. She took out a few golden beans and placed them in her purse. The rest of the money, including the jewelry box, were all thrown into the paradise. Xiaomu narrowed her eyes and looked at the translucent valley in midair. She saw that the empty space in front of the peach forest was almost completely filled with boxes. However, there was still a lot of empty space behind the lake and peach forest, so Arbor wasn't worried that there wouldn't be enough space. Now, she was just waiting for Second Uncle to bring back all the supplies. When that time came, everything that needed to be prepared. Xiao Mu's small face was expressionless, but she was clearly happy on the inside. With a wave of her small hand, she retrieved the heart of paradise. Just as she swallowed it, she felt a gust of cold air assault her from afar. A layer of goosebumps inexplicably appeared on our dear Xiao Mu's skin, causing her heart to clench and her entire body to rapidly tighten. Xiao Mu, you? What are you? Xiao 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 ao xiao xiao. In less than a second, the courtyard door was kicked open. Brother Hu flew towards Arbor like a kite with a broken string. Startled, Arbor's eyes turned cold. He took a step forward and rushed towards Xiao Hu, who was flying towards him. He reached out to catch him, but he couldn't withstand the force of the impact. Holding on to Xiao Hu, he staggered back a few steps. She touched Brother Hu's chest with her small hand and found that he had fainted. A ferocious old face suddenly appeared at the entrance of the courtyard. He only had one eye and half a nose. Half of his face was charred black, as if he had been burned by something. The upper half of his face was completely glued together, making him look rather terrifying. Chapter 86. Alarmed, Arbor immediately turned around and hastily took out ointment and smeared it on Xiao Hu's chest. That hemostatic ointment was extremely effective. The moment it was smeared, the blood immediately stopped flowing. Arbor's heart calmed down a bit. Just as she placed Xiao Hu against the wall of the courtyard, a sinister granny's face abruptly appeared in front of her, and a withered, twig-like hand reached for her neck. Xiao Mu dodged backwards, and a faint doubt flitted through the old woman's eyes. Her hand that was grabbing Xiao Mu also paused, and she examined Xiao Mu from head to toe before chuckling coldly. Little child, you're actually a mystic cultivator. Although your cultivation isn't high, it's commendable at your age. Old senior, may I ask why you suddenly barged into my home and injured my older brother? This granny carried dense mystic energy, and her cultivation was probably on par with that ghost saber that Prince Imo had crushed to death. Perhaps she was also a level 8 mystic cultivator. Although Arbor was alarmed, she didn't show it on the surface. This granny must have sensed the aura of the heart of paradise and followed it here. Arbor tightly clenched her fists, inwardly resentful. She was still too careless. Child, where are your parents? Father left early in the morning and still hasn't returned. Mother took the girl out to buy groceries. A trace of suspicion flashed through the granny's eyes. In reality, when she entered this courtyard, she had already used her mystic conscience to sense it. She knew that the little doll wasn't lying and that there was no one else's aura in this small residence. Little doll, tell Granny honestly, did anyone pass by your home just now? Or, did you see anything strange? Arbor honestly shook her head. The granny's gaze swept over her before she suddenly reached out and sucked the unconscious Xiao Hu into her palm. She was extremely fast, and Arbor couldn't stop her in time. Moreover, the difference in their cultivation was too great, so it was useless even if she wanted to stop her. The old woman's withered fingers picked up a bit of ointment from Xiao Hu's chest and brought it to her nose for a sniff. She then turned to Xiao Mu with a pensive smile. Little girl, how can a poor person afford to use such a high-quality ointment? I think you'd better confess honestly. When I passed by your house, I clearly smelled a trace of aura leaked out of the mystic domain after the mystic realm was refined. As expected, they're here for the heart of paradise. Arbor took a deep breath and clenched his fists tightly behind his back. If you don't tell me the truth, give me an explanation. The old woman gave her an enigmatic smile. This old woman will refine you two into puppet ghosts, making the two of you unable to reincarnate for all eternity. Arbor suddenly opened his small fists behind his back, and two strength and speed talismans shot out into the distance. At the same time, a cold voice that sounded like it had been pulled out from hell said mechanically and monotonously, "Kill her." Stay Up Late, who was flying over, never knew that he could be so fast. He only felt something bounce onto his body in a flash, and then a trace of special power and speed entered his blood vessels at the same time. There was no need for Arbor to give another order. Stay Up Late's 1 meter of grace flew in front of the old woman, startling her. She unconsciously retreated and let go of Xiaohu's hand. Arbor reached out to grab Xiaohu's body and lightly leaped to the side. She turned back to stare at the old woman as if she was looking at a corpse. That gaze made even the old woman, whose hands were stained with blood, shiver. She felt a chill run up her spine. Chapter 87. You're courting death. The old woman hated herself for being scared off by the little girl's gaze. She reached out and casually grabbed the sword with her withered fingers. He expected that under this grab, that unremarkable sword would definitely be shattered into pieces. But with a clang, the old woman's claws were knocked away. Before she could react, the young man's sword split into two. Under the old woman's shocked gaze, the sword in his left hand stabbed into the old woman's back. "You." The old woman turned her head in shock. Her 10 withered fingers suddenly turned into sharp spikes and swiped them at the young man's arm. The 10 spikes were polished with a blue luster. It was obvious at a glance that they were highly toxic and could kill with just a touch. Arbor's pupils constricted as he watched from the side. A trace of doubt surfaced in his eyes. The spikes looked a bit like poisonous thorny vines. Could it be? So you're a demonic cultivator. A faint trace of disdain flitted through Aoye's eyes. It's just a pity that this poisonous thorny vines level is a bit low. Everyone knew that a mystic cultivator above level 10 could find a powerful mystic beast to contract. When the time came, their combat strength would increase tremendously. But in reality, most people couldn't become mystic cultivators. A portion of them turned into body cultivators, which were ordinary martial artists. Their strength naturally couldn't be compared to mystic cultivators, but they had a huge advantage over ordinary people. An even smaller portion of people turned into demonic cultivators in pursuit of supreme strength at all costs. In the eyes of the world, demonic cultivators were definitely a terrifying dark profession. Unlike mystic cultivators who were open and aboveboard, demonic cultivators were often labeled as evil and dark. They absorbed the power of evil beasts and plants and fused it for their own use to increase their own strength. Their most common manifestation was that they fused part of the power of evil beasts and plants into their bodies. For example, the old woman's fingers could already mutate into poisonous thorny vines. This meant that her fusion was considered successful. Don't look at how the demonic cultivators were looked down upon right now. Once the zombie apocalypse happened, the survival advantages of this kind of people would quickly become apparent. In the later stages, when missions were exchanged for supplies, many special operations teams were born. At that time, the status of demonic masters in the teams was almost comparable to that of apothecaries. They were all indispensable and important members of the teams. He was a rare demonic cultivator, but there was no longer any need for him to exist. Kill her. Arbor was too lazy to investigate the old woman's identity and ordered again. Yes, little master. Roar. Stay Up Late suddenly released a giant beast with shiny black fur. It bit the old woman's arm, chewed twice, and spat out a pile of minced meat on the ground. It was a black panther the size of a small elephant. Its glossy fur flickered with a black light under the sun. When Aoye released this giant beast, Qiao Mu's eyes suddenly lit up. This was the first time she had seen such an enormous mystic beast with such astonishing combat strength. A level 8 mystic cultivator tore off her arm in one bite, causing her to completely lose her ability to fight. This Black Panther was truly formidable. The nouveau riche crown prince was truly extravagant. He could casually send a subordinate over and instantly kill a level 8 mystic cultivator. With her cultivation, she couldn't see through Stay Up Late's level at all. However, She knew from the start that Stay Up Late's cultivation was definitely above the old woman's. Chapter 88. She knew from the start that Aoye's cultivation was higher than the old woman's. So that the old woman was dead for sure. She wasn't using her power to bully others, but to protect herself. Every man for himself. She didn't want to die, so it was better for the old woman to die. The old woman had never thought that she would die in this small mountain village. Her single eye glared fiercely at the little girl who was walking towards her step by step. Little girl, if you kill me, you will never have a day of peace. My sect won't let you go. Your whole family will pay with their lives. You better think it through. After he finished speaking, he saw the little girl reveal a trace of ghostly sneer at him. What a load of nonsense. The black ferrule suddenly landed in her hand, and she smacked the old woman's face with it. The old woman's head was covered in blood, and her breathing became sluggish. Aoye, don't you know that the first time we saw Little Master, she was killing people by the smelly ditch? Do you think such a savage little girl will listen to your threats? Haha. Crush her life lantern and kill her, Arbor said coldly. At this point, the old woman finally understood that the little child before her really wanted to take her life. How do you know about life lanterns? The old woman's lips trembled, and her entire body and soul trembled. Arbor wasn't interested in answering her. Instead, she stared at her with her dark eyes for a while, then asked softly, "What is a puppet, ghost?" The old woman's body couldn't help but tremble. Even she didn't realize that she was trembling like a quail in front of this 6 or 7-year-old girl. I don't know what you're talking about. Little Master, this person should be an elder of the Ghoul sect. The Ghoul sect has an extremely secretive secret technique called the puppet technique. They can refine young boys and girls into puppets. From then on, they'll be slaves and have no thoughts or emotions. They'll completely listen to their master's orders, like puppets on strings. Xiaomu suddenly smiled at the old woman, but this smile only caused the old woman's entire body to tremble even more violently. She didn't know if it was a smile or not. The lines on the little girl's face didn't change, and her eyes were cold as if they contained ice shards. Only her little mouth moved as if it was opening, and her rigid little face was still paralyzed. Her smile was uncoordinated, and it gave people goosebumps. You want to refine me into a puppet? Xiaomu suddenly moved. She shattered the old woman's chin with a kick and abruptly dashed up like she had gone mad. She ruthlessly smashed the ferrule on her body, as if she wanted to use her entire life's strength on this old woman. Trash like you who take other people's lives at the drop of a hat. What need do you have to live in this world? Dogs like you who don't care about other people's wishes and treat innocent people like kittens and puppies as puppets and slaves are the ones who should die first. Die. Arbor's emotions exploded. He fiercely wielded the black ferrule in his hand and smashed it on the old woman's face, body, and head. You're the kittens and puppies. You're the puppet slaves. You're the one. I'll let you refine me into a puppet. I'll let you treat me like a kitten or a dog. Go to hell. Die. Die. The little girl's eyes flashed with a fierceness that didn't match her age. She viciously smashed the ferrule on the back of the old woman's head, smashing it like a watermelon. Stay Up Late immediately rushed forward and grabbed the old woman's life lantern and crushed it. He saw the little girl holding the ferrule tightly with both hands. Her dark eyes were like whirlpools, so dark that no light could be seen. Chapter 89. Stay Up Late's heart skipped a beat. Seeing the little girl's demonic expression, he hurriedly bowed and called out, "Little Master." Xiaomu's chilly gaze landed on the old woman's mangled body on the ground. There was clearly not a single person in her pitch-black and serene eyes. Little Master. Stay Up Late's expression changed slightly. He raised his voice slightly to pull Arbor out of her emotions. The little hand that was tightly holding the ferrule loosened in an instant. Her frosty little face relaxed a little. She turned her head to look at the anxious black-clothed youth and nodded. I'm fine. Dispose of the body. Don't leave any traces behind. Yes. Stay Up Late nodded. He skillfully picked up the old woman's body and sprinkled some white powder on the ground with his left hand. The puddle of blood quickly dried up and disappeared. The yard seemed to have returned to its usual calm. But Arbor's heart could not calm down. She lowered her head and looked at Brother who was lying in the corner with his eyes closed. She subconsciously clenched her fists tightly. She knew very well that stopping the bleeding on the chest would not be of much use. The old woman's attack had caused serious damage to Brother Who's internal organs. No one in this small mountain village could heal him. Little master, this little brother's injuries are serious. He might not live. Stay Up Late knew that the little girl was upset and wanted to comfort her. Arbor nodded and interrupted him. Go take care of it. Yes. Stay Up Late took 2 steps forward with the old woman. He heard the little girl's soft voice behind him. I've troubled you. Next time, I'll be more careful. Stay Up Late paused for a moment. He did not know why, but his emotions were inexplicably complicated. She was so young, but her expression made it seem as if she had experienced the vicissitudes of life for decades. Just looking at her made one's heart ache. Stay Up Late cupped his fists and said, I'm not afraid of trouble. He carried the old woman's body up the roof and disappeared in a few leaps. Arbor carried the unconscious Xiao Hu into the house. She sat by the child's bed in a daze for a long time. Her cold little hand held the boy's rough palm. Little tiger. Arbor's voice couldn't help but choke. She held the boy's hand tightly, her heart mixed with a touch of sadness. Could this be fate? In his previous life, Little Tiger had been torn to shreds by a corpse hag. Second Uncle had joined the operation team and accepted missions to kill corpse hags to avenge his son. In the end, he had lost his life in a level 5 mission. She had thought that in this life, she would do her best to change the fate of the father and son, but who would have thought it was her fault for being careless? She shouldn't have let the little tiger stay outside the door, and she shouldn't have taken out the heart of paradise so rashly. The crown prince had already warned her. It was her ignorance that had harmed others and herself. It was her fault. Xiaomu sat on the edge of the bed with her head lowered. She tightly grasped the boy's hands and pressed them against her forehead with her eyes closed. She continuously used her small hands to forcefully knock against her forehead, completely unaware that her small hands holding the boy's hands were emitting a faint green light. Master, don't torture yourself anymore. This is just a small wound. You used to be able to heal it with a single golden needle. Xiaomu raised her head in shock and looked around. Other than Xiao Hu was lying on the bed on the verge of death, she was the only one in the room. Who's talking? Chapter 90. Master, it's Little Ball. Little Ball. Sob. The soft voice sounded pitiful as it sobbed. You really don't remember Little Ball. Sob. Arbor jumped up and looked around to confirm that she and Xiao Hu were alone. Then, this voice? Master, you're bad. The aggrieved voice sounded. This time, Arbor realized that the soft voice didn't seem to be coming from the outside world. Instead, it seemed to be coming directly from her brain. Who are you trying to trick? Come out. Arbor felt her nerves tense up. The soft voice suddenly disappeared. Arbor roared into the air, but the other party didn't respond for a long time. Why aren't you saying anything? Xiao Mu was completely confused. Sob. The weak cry echoed in her mind, mixed with a few sobs. Arbor was at her wit's end. She couldn't figure out what was going on and couldn't see the other party. Arbor could only ask tentatively, Your little ball? The soft voice instantly rose in pitch, filled with unbelievable excitement. Master, you remember Little Ball. You remember Little Ball's name. Master, you remember Little Ball. Master remembers Little Ball. Are you crazy? Didn't you tell me the name Little Ball yourself? Arbor was really speechless. She didn't want to talk to this idiot anymore. What did you say about golden needles? Arbor asked patiently. Master, you just have to open the star domain and take out the set of magical needles that your master gave you. You'll definitely be able to cure this kid on the bed. Arbor chuckled. Although she could understand every single word that this idiot said, why couldn't she understand the meaning when they were put together? What the hell was the star domain? When did she have a master? And what magical needles? Were you sure you weren't joking? You've got the wrong person, Arbor concluded with certainty and walked out the door. No matter what, she had to try to get someone to treat little Ball. Even if there was only a slim chance of survival, she had to try. Master, how could Chocho recognize the wrong person? You're Chocho's master. We've lived and died together for so long. I'm Master's only Chocho. Arbor stepped out of the door, his delicate eyebrows furrowed. There was a nagging voice that kept echoing in his mind. Chocho, Chocho, Chocho. He really wanted to slap it to death. Master, why don't you use your inner vision? Chocho is in your Dantian's mystic domain. Chocho won't lie to Master. Master, what a noisy baby. Wait a minute. Arbor stopped and stared at the tree. You're that tree? Fuck. That tree really became a spirit. Not only would he fight with her for the heart of paradise, but he could even speak now. She hurriedly went to her Dantian to check on the strange tree, only to see a few thin and weak branches waving at her as if they were spasming. Master, how can you talk? Master, Chocho has always been able to speak. It's just that after most of Master's strength was sealed, Chocho and Master went through life and death together, so we were also sealed. Chocho has always been working hard to absorb energy from the outside world, until today. Stop. It's really you. You're secretly absorbing my mystic energy, right? Arbor angrily lashed out at the little tree. I was wondering why my Dantian was so strange. Back then, the mystic domain that stored mystic energy was the size of an olive pit, right? Now, it's gone because of you. The reason why my mystic veins are so thin and weak is also because you've always been secretly stealing my mystic energy. When she first broke open her mystic veins, the mystic domain was still very normal. Later on, it freaking mutated. So angry. Chapter 91. Woo. Master, Chocho is very useful. Chocho's leaves can not only increase one's mystic energy, it can also strengthen one's body and prolong one's life. Woo-woo. Also, Chocho can bloom and bear fruit in the future. If Master eats the holy fruit, your cultivation will at least increase by 2 levels. Feeling that its little master was disdainful of it, the sapling sobbed. Along with its sobs, the tree's body even trembled back and forth, looking very pitiful. Arbor was speechless for a moment, looking at its bare sapling. Then where are your leaves? My leaves have all been plucked by Master to feed those 2 foodies. Woo-woo-woo. Speaking of this, Chocho felt very sad. This unscrupulous Master, as long as she saw that it had grown leaves, she would take them all away. Arbor's mouth twitched. Seeing how pitiful it was crying, she couldn't help but say, I definitely didn't pluck them. And even if I did, I wouldn't have plucked all of them. In any case, I would have left you 2 to cover up your ugliness. Although you make it sound like I really did this unscrupulous thing, I'm very clear that I didn't do it. Arbor chuckled coldly. It's you. It's you. It's you. Master, don't be so stubborn. Whether you pluck them or not, who else could be clearer than it? And who's a foodie? Arbor glanced at the sapling in annoyance. Get lost. How am I a foodie? Arbor, who obviously didn't hear what the sapling said, thought that the sapling was dissing her. Although I buried a lot of meat buns in my inner world, I didn't eat a single one. How can I be a foodie? I definitely won't admit it. All right, you stay here. I still have things to do. Arbor couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with the sapling. She would ask it about the mystic domain next time. Right now, she was rushing to find a doctor. Master, why are you looking for a doctor? You can treat it yourself. Also, how can those country bumpkin doctors have the ability to treat this brat's internal injuries? Although this sapling spoke as if it was true, she was very clear that from her previous life to this life, she had never studied medicine. Cure my ass. Master, why don't I try and see if I can get a healing pill from the Starfield? That's a top-grade pill made by your godly Dr. Master. It's guaranteed to cure all illnesses. Why bother looking for a village doctor? Crazy. Xiaomu couldn't help but roll her eyes. Why couldn't she remember having a godly doctor as her master? He didn't want to talk to this weird tree anymore. Master, wait. Seeing that its little master clearly didn't believe it, the sapling became anxious. As if it was having a cramp, it shook its entire body chaotically. I'm shaking, I'm shaking, I'm shaking, I'm shaking, I'm shaking. The little tree trembled so much that its branches danced in the air. If it could transform into a human form, it would probably be in tears by now. How tiring. He had to expend so much effort just to retrieve a single healing pill. How pitiful. In the past, he wouldn't have needed to expend so much effort. Just as Xiao Mu's patience was about to run out, she saw a glaring golden light appear at the top of the small tree and disappear in a flash. A round crimson pill suddenly popped out from under the tree root. Xiao Mu was a bit dumbfounded, and she reflexively reached out to catch that pill. Little master, I'm so tired. The sapling's voice was clearly much weaker, and it was no longer as lively as before. I need to rest for a while. I can't see little master for the next 2 days. Also, don't snatch Paradise Planet. I need it to recover. The sapling's voice disappeared. Arbor was a little irritated as he looked inside himself. He saw that the sapling's bare branches were drooping in exhaustion, and the green light that covered the tree's body was much dimmer. The child retracted her gaze and lowered her head to look at the pill in her hand. A faint medicinal fragrance lingered in the air. Arbor's eyes were filled with confusion. Chapter 92. The pill melted as soon as it entered his mouth, and in less than 15 minutes, Xiao Mu's pale little face gradually turned rosy. Xiao Mu sat beside him on the bed, in a daze for a long time. In her previous life, her mystic meridians opened at the age of 16. In this life, she opened her mystic meridians at the age of 7. In her previous life, the apparition of her mystic meridians only appeared when she was about to die. In this life, the apparition of her mystic meridians had already appeared. In her previous life, when her inner world first opened, there was nothing in space and time. In this life, her inner world was filled with treasures that made people drool. In her previous life, her dantian was just a dantian, and her mystic domain had always been in the center of her dantian. In this life, her dantian was like a pitch-black starry night. Not only did a tree grow in it, it even destroyed her mystic domain. In her previous life, she had never seen the golden talisman jade tome, nor had she ever cultivated talisman techniques. In this life, it was as if she had won the lottery, inexplicably obtaining the golden talisman jade tome, and even learning how to draw talismans. With so many strange changes, no matter how insensitive she was, she realized that it seemed her life was missing an important part of her past. Was it possible? Why did she remember the events of her previous life so clearly, but had no impression of this strange tree? What the hell was the star domain? That tree must know something. Arbor couldn't help but use her inner sight to see if the tree was any better. Unfortunately, ever since she gave the pill, the tree seemed to have completely withered, its branches drooping motionlessly on the ground. Arbor thought that if it could transform into a human now, it would probably do the same paralyzed pose as her. Jojo. Mother's voice came from outside the courtyard. Xiao Mu's figure moved, and when she looked up, she saw that Xiao Hu had opened his eyes and was looking at her with a confused expression. Little sister. Xiao Hu's memory was still stuck at the scene at the courtyard entrance. He was a bit nervous and wanted to sit up. That fierce granny. She? It's fine, brother Xiao Hu. Arbor held Xiao Hu's small hand. Rest a bit more. My mother is back. I'll go out and take a look. Xiao Hu's awakening made Arbor feel a lot more relaxed. She jogged out the door and stood in the courtyard with a slightly stunned expression. Wei Ziqin walked up with a helpless expression and poked her daughter's nose. Who needs to buy so many vegetables? Xiao Yao, that girl, can't wait to move the entire market back home. The waiter happily took the few copper coins that Xiao Yao gave him and happily pushed the handcart away. Arbor stared blankly at the 40 to 50 baskets of vegetables and birds piled up in the small courtyard. He silently looked at the girl in green clothes. Miss, this servant knows that the young master has a hobby of collecting supplies, so this servant bought all the vegetables that could be bought in the entire market. There are still 15 taels of silver and 300 copper coins left, Xiao Yao said as she handed over a small purse. The corner of Arbor's mouth twitched. He waved his hand and said, "Keep it. This lass is really smart. She can actually see through my intentions so accurately." The small gold ingots that she had given her previously were worth 1 tael each. The current price of 1 tael of gold was about 10 taels of silver. 1 tael of silver could be exchanged for 1,000 copper coins. Little Xiao Yao had practically emptied the entire market and actually spent less than 5 taels of silver. Arbor's mood was slightly lifted. From the looks of it, the 400 taels of gold that she had given second uncle should be enough to buy a lot of food. Speaking of which, second uncle should be back in 2 days. Chapter 93. On the other hand, Wei Ziqin looked at the 50-something baskets of vegetables in front of her with a slightly worried expression. It was true that mystic cultivators had inner worlds, but could her daughter's tiny inner world hold so many things? Although Wei Ziqin was a normal person, she still had common sense about the size of a mystic cultivator's inner world. "Jojo, where are the things from the dozen or so carts from before?" Wei Ziqin suddenly recalled that compared to the dozens of baskets of vegetables, the dozen or so carts of supplies that had been shipped over in the morning were even more troublesome. There were more than 100 boxes of clothes alone. How could her small inner world hold them all? Arbor tilted her head in thought before taking out 4 storage talismans and waving at her mother and Xiao Yao. "Mom, Xiao Yao, help me divide these vegetables first." 15 minutes later, Wei Ziqin and Xiao Yao helped Arbor divide the things in the baskets into categories according to vegetables, meat, and poultry, and spread them all over the ground. "Look, this is called a storage talisman." Arbor waved the yellow talismans in her hand at Wei Ziqin and Xiao Yao before swiping 2 fingers over one of the storage talismans. After a faint yellow halo flashed, all the vegetables on the ground were stored into the storage talisman by Arbor. She then put away the storage talisman that was full of vegetables and took out another one. Following the same pattern, she stored all the meat and eggs on the ground into this storage talisman. She then sighed in relief and said, "This type of storage talisman is only 1 cubic meter in size. The storage space is limited, and each item can only be stored 100 times. So there's no need to put these baskets that take up space inside." Our dear Xiao who had come in response, was like a country bumpkin. He gaped in shock and looked at his eldest sister like she was an immortal. Let alone Xiao, even Wei Ziqin had never seen a storage talisman before. On the other hand, Xiao Yao knew a bit about the rarity of storage talismans, so she looked at her little master with sparkling eyes. Time and space inside a storage talisman are relatively still. Without special circumstances, the items stored inside won't change at all. After saying that, Arbor stuffed a yellow talisman and a blue talisman into her mother's hand. "Mom, drip 2 drops of blood on these 2 talismans, and you'll see how big this storage space is." Wei Ziqin's was like she had received a hot potato and hurriedly waved her hand. "Mom doesn't want it. Mom is just a normal person. What do I need these mystic cultivator artifacts for?" Xiaomu remained impassive. "Mother." She grabbed her mother's hand and walked to a wooden stool at the side to sit down. "Actually, when I was kidnapped by human traffickers after school, there were some things that I didn't tell you clearly." Wei Ziqin felt like her heart was about to jump out of her chest. Looking at her daughter's expressionless face, she nervously held her hand and asked, "What is it?" "Actually, the people who caught me that day were from an evil sect. They saw that I became a mystic cultivator at such a young age and felt that I was very useful. They wanted to make me into a puppet ghost for the evil sect to use." Arbor made up a story without blushing or skipping a beat. Wei Ziqin's face immediately turned pale. Although she didn't know what the name puppet ghost was, she felt that it was very terrifying just from hearing it. So her Jojo had actually experienced such a dangerous incident. Wei Ziqin tightly grasped her daughter's hand and urged, and then that youth saved daughter and even gave daughter quite a few of these storage talismans. Xiao Mu's face was stoic as she continued to make up the story without blinking. "The youth said that we shouldn't stay here for long. Daughter has already been targeted by those evil sect people, so we must leave Quoto village." Chapter 94. As she spoke, she tried her best to put on a worried expression and imitated the crown prince's tone as she sighed. If we don't leave this place soon, our lives will be in danger. Xiao Yao almost burst out laughing. Little Mrs. Face was really unsuited for this kind of strange expression. She was so worried that she didn't notice it. Instead, she looked paralyzed and her face scrunched up into a ball. It was inexplicably comical. Eldest aunt, we can't let those bad people take eldest sister away, Xiao Hu said hastily. Other than his face being a bit pale, his body looked fine. This child wasn't someone who could rest well. He wanted to get out of bed as soon as his body recovered. Thankfully, that life-saving medicine was really effective, so Arbor was relieved. Wei Ziqin couldn't tell at all that Xiao Hu had suffered serious internal injuries and was about to step into the gates of hell. At this moment, she heard Xiao Hu clamor, "Eldest aunt, why don't we pack up and leave immediately?" Wei Ziqin reflexively nodded in agreement, but Arbor couldn't help but secretly roll his eyes. How could they be in such a hurry? Mom, there's no need to be in such a hurry. Besides, we can't just leave like that. We have to pack up our things and wait for second uncle to come back. Oh right, Dad's still outside. Xiao Hu only remembered his dad now. But what about those people from the heretical sect? They probably won't. Arbor continued to argue without blushing or skipping a beat. Those people were chased away by the crown prince, so they probably won't be back for a few days. We still have time. As he spoke, he stuffed 2 storage talismans into Wei Ziqin's hands. Mom, these 2 storage talismans are for you to pack up your things in the house. Pack up everything you can, including those household utensils and farm tools. You might need them in the future. Wei Ziqin nodded repeatedly and didn't refuse the storage talismans. Following her daughter's instructions, she bit her finger and dripped a drop of blood on the talismans. Yellow and blue light flashed and disappeared. Arbor explained to his mother the difference between yellow and blue talismans and taught her how to store items. When Wei Ziqin heard that the storage talisman had a limit on the number of times she could store an item, she felt sorry for wasting one of the storage talismans. She hurriedly put away the 2 talismans as if they were treasures. Arbor's eyes twitched as he looked at her. Actually, as long as there was enough blank talisman paper, your daughter could just draw it casually. It really wasn't that precious. At night, Xiao Zhongbong dragged his tired feet home and sat at the dinner table without saying a word. Xiao Hu held his bowl of rice and ate it in big mouthfuls. His face was very rosy, and there were no signs of injury at all. Wei Ziqin picked up some food for her 2 daughters. The 3 of them chatted and laughed, ignoring the dark-faced man beside them. Xiao Zhongbong couldn't hold it in any longer. He placed his bowl on the table and looked at his eldest daughter with a complicated expression. Your grandmother is sick. Tomorrow, you 2 sisters will go back to visit your grandmother. Got it, Arbor replied indifferently. Xiao Zhongbong restrained himself and couldn't help but say, Actually, our family has long moved out of the Qiao family mansion. We've always lived alone. In fact, we've long separated from the family. There's no need for us to go through the extra step of writing this separation document. We even angered your grandmother until she fell ill. Arbor glanced at the man indifferently and said indifferently, Isn't it good to write a separation document? This is the clan's rule. It's clear and proper so that there won't be any complications in the future. As the saying goes, even blood-related brothers settle accounts clearly. Don't you think so? Those good-for-nothings from the Qiao family shouldn't even think about getting a single cent of her resources. Xiao Zhongbong was immediately speechless. Chapter 95. The next day, Arbor carried the round little bun Jolin to the old madam's mansion. Arbor had fed her sister a lot of food these days, so the little bun in her hand had become much heavier. Little Jolin was carried by her sister as they ran. She clapped her hands from time to time and called out softly, Sister, sister. Looking at her happy expression, she couldn't wait for her sister to run faster and fly for a while. At this time, the sky was just beginning to brighten. Arbor deliberately ran to the Qiao family's mansion early in the morning with her little sister and started banging on the door. The doorkeeper opened the door sleepily and looked at the 2 girls in front of him with a baffled expression. He naturally recognized these 2 girls from the first branch family, but the old madam had never liked them. Now that they came to disturb her sleep so early in the morning, his attitude was not polite. Father told us to come visit grandmother. Arbor's little face was cold as she carried the little bun in one hand and was about to step through the door. The doorkeeper hurriedly blocked the two of them at the door and said impatiently, "Wait, I have to go get someone to inform grandmother." Arbor shook the little bun in her hand. Jolene immediately remembered what her sister said to her on the way here. "Linner, when we reach grandmother's door, just cry. Don't say anything. We'll cry all the way back. When you're done crying, sister will give you meat buns when we get home." Jolene's mouth watered at the thought of meat buns. She blinked her eyes and burst into tears. Her voice was full of emotion as tears streamed down her face. "Grandmother! Grandmother!" The little child screamed at the top of her lungs, dragging out her sobs in a pitiful manner. Xiaomu suddenly felt that her little sister really did have a talent for acting. Look at her acting. Tears came out on a whim. That was pretty good. Although the sky was bright at this time, some of the villagers who were rushing to the fields had already woken up. When they passed by, their eyes curiously glanced at the Chow family's mansion. The doorkeeper was a bit dumbfounded. He didn't expect the little child to start crying just like that. His hand holding the two children froze in midair. "My granddaughter learned that my grandmother was ill and came to visit her. Since grandmother doesn't like it and won't let me in, then I'll come visit another day." Arbor coldly recited a line, picked up the crying Xiao Linder, turned around and ran. The gatekeeper was dumbfounded at, "Hey, little ancestor, can't you let me send someone in to inform them?" After receiving her sister's order, Xiao Lin really cried all the way back. Xiaomu already knew that the little bun was small, but her voice wasn't small at all. As she cried all the way back, she truly caught everyone's attention. Her small face looked miserable and pitiful, and the villagers all asked each other about it. When they learned that the Arbor sisters had come to greet the old lady out of goodwill but were chased away, they looked at each other in dismay. It seemed that the rumors about the separation of the Chow family 2 days ago were true. This old madam of the Chow family was really unkind. Arbor carried the crying Chow Lin home and coincidentally bumped into Chow Zhongbong, who was about to leave. Wei Ziqin had just come out of the kitchen after washing the pots and pans. When she saw her little daughter crying, she hurried over to comfort her. When Chow Zhongbong asked for the reason, his entire face turned awkward. "I'm afraid I won't be able to enter grandmother's house in the future," Arbor said with a cold expression. "So, do you still need to visit grandmother every now and then to greet her?" Chapter 96. Chow Zhongbong knew that he was in the wrong and was extremely embarrassed. After a while, he said, Why did you let your sister cry all the way back?" Just like that, Xiao Lin cried all the way back. Everyone in and out of the village knew that his old mother had blocked the two young daughters outside the Chow residence and didn't allow them to enter. He was the one who called his two daughters back to pay respects to old madam, but who knew that they couldn't even enter the door. Xiao Zhongbong only felt his face burning. Arbor glanced at him indifferently. Once little sister cries, even mother can't coax her. What he meant was that he was just a baby and really didn't know how to coax little sister to stop her from crying. Xiao Zhongbong felt aggrieved when he saw Xiao Zhongbong's expression that said, "Go ahead if you can." He stammered and moved his lips, but couldn't force out a word. He could only sigh and sit to the side, not planning to go out and visit his mother. The village was only so big, so the rumor that old madam was unkind and refused to let her two young granddaughters in had reached old madam's ears. Old madam was really wrong this time. She didn't know that Arbor had come and left early in the morning. She was so angry that she fell back and fell sick again. After this incident, Xiao Zhongbong completely stopped and never said that he wanted to visit your grandmother again. Arbor was happy and relaxed. When he was free, he focused on cultivating mystic energy in the room. However, when it was time, he was interrupted by the little foodie knocking on the door. Ever since Arbor used his mystic sense to bring out a white and fat meat bun from the little foodie's inner world, the little foodie started thinking about it and begged to eat it again and again. She even learned how to hug someone's thigh and was like a burden that couldn't be shaken off. At this time, the little foodie was sick of it again. She hugged her sister's arm and refused to let go. She kept mumbling about meat buns, and it was simply demonic. Wei Ziqin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She went forward to hug her younger daughter and coaxed, "How about mother make meat buns for you? Sister has meat buns. Sister has meat buns." Wei Ziqin was speechless. She didn't like her mother's buns. Wei Ziqin only thought that Xiao Mu had bought meat buns for this little glutton ancestor to eat when she wasn't home. "Xiao Xiao, where did you buy these meat buns from? They look delicious. Look at how your sister is thinking about them every day. Why don't we go buy a few more?" Arbor was speechless. To be honest, she had never eaten that meat bun before. How would he know if it tasted good? "Sister has it. Sister has it." Sister took it out with a whoosh. The little foodie clamored. Wei Ziqin and Xiaomu looked at each other in bewilderment. Arbor wanted to cry. If she could take it, she would have taken it out to stuff the little foodie's long-winded mouth. However, the last time she had used her mystic sense to fish out a meat bun with great difficulty, the gate to the inner world had been tightly shut, not allowing her mystic sense to enter again. Who would have such an arrogant inner world? Only her family had it. Okay? The three of them were talking when they heard hearty laughter from outside the courtyard. "Brother, sister-in-law, Jojo, your second uncle is back." Second uncle. Arbor jumped off the chair. Seeing that the little foodie was hugging her arm and refusing to let go, she simply picked her up and ran out. She talked to the little foodie along the way. "Sister has peaches. If you're good, I'll give them to you tonight. If you're not, you don't have any." When the little foodie heard that there were peaches, she immediately stopped making a fuss and nodded repeatedly. "Sister, I'll be good." "Then you're not allowed to talk." The little foodie immediately reached out two chubby little hands and covered her little mouth with them. Chapter 97. Second Uncle. Arbor finally got Xiao Zhongxing back, so how could she not be happy? The moment she walked out the door with the little bun, she saw a well-built man with a tanned face standing at the door and looking at her with a grin. "Second Uncle, it's been hard on you." Second Uncle had been running around outside for a while, so it looked like he was quite busy. Fortunately, there was Second Uncle to help her purchase supplies. Otherwise, with her young age of 7, her hands and feet wouldn't be able to do anything. "Second younger brother, you're back. Come in and take a seat. Your older brother is also in the room." Wei Ziqin went out to welcome him with a smile. "No need, eldest sister-in-law. I'll rest after I'm done." Xiao Zhongxing shook his head with a smile and gestured to Arbor. "Jojo, let's go. There are too many things, so we can't drag them into the village." Second Uncle asked the convoy to gather at the foot of Hulun Mountain. "Let's go over and take a look." "Okay." Xiaomu nodded and inwardly praised Second Uncle. It's good to drag her to Hulun Mountain. After sending the others away, I can focus on organizing the supplies and avoid attracting the envy of the villagers and greedy people like Madame Nei Li and Xiao Yingchun. When Xiao Lin saw that her older sister was about to abandon her and run off by herself, her big eyes sparkled and tears almost fell. Arbor poked her chubby cheeks. "You're not allowed to cry. If you cry, I won't give you anything good to eat. When older sister comes back, I'll give you an incredibly delicious peach. You'll only get to eat if you're obedient." Xiao Lin's little face immediately brightened up, and her eyes curved into crescents as she nodded repeatedly with a grin. This made Wei Ziqin, who was carrying her and patting her, feel both amused and exasperated. After comforting his little sister, Arbor caught up with Second Uncle and quickened his pace toward the foot of Hulun Mountain. The area along Hulun Mountain was very barren, so Xiao Zhongxing wasn't worried that the villagers would run there and see this large batch of supplies. He walked briskly and said to Arbor with a smile, "Jojo, Second Uncle didn't let you down this time. I've bought almost everything you wanted. Now, can you tell me why Jojo is buying so many things?" Arbor nodded and used the same excuse he used to fool his mother to fool his second uncle again. The latter had a solemn expression on his face when he heard that. "In that case, we should move out of Quoto village as soon as possible. Why don't we go to Fong village?" Arbor hurriedly shook his head. "Second uncle, Fong village is too close to here. We can't guarantee that our enemies from the evil sects will find us. For the sake of safety, it's best that we immediately depart for Shiju City. Shiju City has city guards, so even if the evil sect chases after us, they have to consider the consequences before making a move." Naturally, they won't dare to openly attack us. Xiao Zhongxing nodded as he listened, and he couldn't help but sigh in his heart at his niece's thoughtfulness. It was difficult for her to be so considerate at such a young age, and it truly made some adults feel inferior. All right, then let's hurry up and set off after we finish collecting the supplies. As expected of father and son, just like Xiaohu, second uncle was also a straightforward person. Arbor was somewhat helpless. He followed second uncle to the gathering point of the convoy. At a glance, there were at least 25 to 26 carriages. Arbor was in a good mood, thinking that second uncle must have spent all the money before returning. Spending money was great. This money would be worthless in a few days. At that time, even if you brought out a large amount of gold, silver, pearls, and jade, there might not be anyone who would exchange it for a bun in your hand. Come, Jojo, second uncle will tell you about these goods. Second uncle was immediately in high spirits when he mentioned the things he had bought. Chapter 98. Since we're going to deal with people from the evil sects, then second uncle's purchase this time was correct. Didn't you say you wanted 800 arrows? Second uncle bought 3,000 arrows for you this time. There are also 30 bows and 100 swords. They're all in the front 3 carriages. These 3 carriages are also ours. Arbor's eyes lit up and she nodded happily. Second uncle was indeed reliable. The little fellow was happy, but her face was expressionless. Xiao Zhongxing was also used to his niece's stoic face and didn't expect her to show any expression. He pulled her small hand and walked towards the 20 or so carriages behind them. Many workers were unloading the goods and were almost done. The goods were all piled up beside the carriages. The stacks of boxes and baskets dazzled the eyes. Arbor's gaze was fixed on the 100 wine jars, and the corner of her mouth twitched slightly. Second uncle was really smart. He had even prepared enough wine for them. Jojo, let me tell you, this food and drink is enough for the 6 of us to eat for half a year, let alone 3 months. As he spoke, he proudly scooped up a wine jug and placed it in his hand. This is the highest quality bamboo leaf wine. The shopkeeper saw that I asked for a lot, so he gave me a discount, 100 coins per jug. 1 jar is enough for me and your father to drink for 4 to 5 days. Saying this, he laughed at Arbor. Jojo, this much wine costs 10 taels. You won't dislike second uncle for buying this, right? Arbor shook her head. Second uncle, you're treating me like an outsider. That's true. Xiao Zhongxing laughed heartily and continued to pull Arbor's small arm forward, excitedly introducing the items he bought. Second uncle's purchase could be considered to have a complete range of varieties. Just the variety of vegetables, meat, and poultry was enough to make people speechless. As Arbor looked, she silently understood second uncle's words. What did it mean to eat for half a year without a problem? The most valuable thing was that second uncle also bought 5 boxes of spices, nearly 20 boxes of medicine, and 2 carriages of various fruits. As Xiaomu looked at these unloaded goods, she felt her heart settle down a lot. With these basic supplies, their family would not need to be afraid no matter where they wandered. She was confident that even if they were in a chaotic world, they would still be able to live a decent life. Thank you, second uncle. Arbor held Xiao Zhongxing's big, rough hand tightly and said in a weak voice. Xiao Zhongxing was stunned. He smiled and reached out to rub Arbor's little head. Silly child, why are you being so polite with second uncle? What's more, second uncle didn't make this trip in vain. Didn't we earn back these 100 jars of wine? Xiaomu curved her lips. Xiao Zhongxing pulled her to the last carriage, where hundreds of cloth bags of different sizes were placed. Xiao Zhongxing opened a bag and showed it to Arbor. These are seeds. Second uncle bought them at a stall. Some cost a few copper coins, some cost a few 100 copper coins. Second uncle bought them blindly. See if they're useful. Arbor took second uncle's open bag, grabbed a few seeds, and looked at them in her palm. She leaned forward and sniffed them, then nodded naturally. These are the seeds of hemostasis grass. They can be used to make the most basic hemostasis ointment. Xiao Zhongxing immediately smiled. Then they're useful. That peddler didn't lie to me. But Jojo, second uncle didn't expect that you would know a thing or two about medicinal seeds at such a young age. Arbor couldn't help but be stunned. Her little hand holding the seeds stiffened slightly, and a strange feeling surfaced in her heart. That's right. How did she know that these were the seeds of hemostasis grass? Chapter 99. Second Uncle. Take these people and leave first. Arbor gave her uncle a look, and Xiao Zhongxing immediately understood. He nodded and gestured for those workers to pull the 20-odd carriages away. Jojo must have her reasons for sending these people away, so Xiao Zhongxing did not ask further. Aoyi. Arbor softly called out after seeing the carriages leave one after another. The black-clothed youth appeared not far behind her like a shadow and cupped his hands in greeting. Little master. Arbor nodded. Use your mystic senses to sense if anyone is spying nearby. This time, she was more cautious. With her current level 3 mystic cultivator perception, she was definitely not as good as Aoyi's. Otherwise, she would not have attracted the ghost sect's people last time. Aoyi nodded and silently released his mystic senses to sense. After a while, he replied, Little master, don't worry. There are no abnormal presences within a radius of 5 kilometers. Arbor nodded slightly before focusing on her dantian. She saw that the sapling was still sickly and drooping without any changes. However, a few of its branches were tightly hugging the heart of paradise and had not moved at all. Arbor sighed. If a storage talisman could store these things, she would be too lazy to take out the heart of paradise. A mystic energy coiled around the heart of paradise and pulled, but the sapling hugged it tightly and did not show any signs of letting go. After a few times, Arbor was very helpless and could only use a negotiating tone to say to the sapling, Chio. For some reason, she clearly felt that the sapling in her dantian seemed to have been shaken by her call, and 2 bare branches trembled slightly. Chio, I'll borrow your heart of paradise for a while. 15 minutes? No, I'll return it to you in 7 minutes, okay? Look, there are so many things here. I have to take them away. Aggrieved. Our dear Xiaomu wanted nothing more than to shed tears of sympathy for herself. She had never seen such an aggrieved master. The heart of paradise was clearly a mystic domain that she had refined. Okay, why did she have to get the damn tree's permission every time she wanted to use it? The inner world was a pit, and so was the Peach Springs. Arbor silently mourned for a while. She thought to herself that it was true that when a tree fell, a person would run away. No matter what, she could only rely on herself to draw talismans. Next time, if she could buy blank talisman paper, she would draw 180 storage talismans and use them comfortably. In the center of her dantian, the sapling, which had originally drooped its branches, seemed to understand her words and really let go of the heart of paradise. Arbor heaved a sigh of relief. He hastily summoned the heart of paradise and put away the items on the ground in an orderly manner, temporarily placing them in a large open space behind the peach forest. The open space behind the peach forest was very large. After putting all these materials in, there was still more than half of the space left empty. Arbor pulled down the reins and put in the 2 carriages full of fruit. Only then did they fill up the space behind the peach forest. Arbor heaved a sigh of relief. Her small face was still expressionless, but she was secretly bursting with joy. The more she looked at the resources, the more delighted she became. Because living things couldn't be put in the Peach Springs, Arbor could only tie the horses to a tree at the side and wait for second uncle to come back and take them away. Recalling that he had promised the little foodie to bring her peaches to eat, Arbor focused her gaze on the translucent valley in the sky. She remembered that there was a luxuriant peach tree in the center of the peach forest. It seemed to have borne fruit. At that time, she had only taken a quick glance. Today, after looking carefully, she had indeed discovered it. There were 3 peaches on the peach tree. They hung stingily from the branches, but each of them was twice the size of an adult's fist. They looked fresh and fragrant, and Arbor wanted to eat them. Chapter 100. After thinking it over, Xiaomu simply took out all 3 peaches and temporarily stored the peach she was going to give Xiaolin into a yellow storage talisman, keeping it close to her body. This talisman was an exemplary talisman gifted by the Golden Talisman Jade Tome. Of the 4 storage talismans she drew, 2 of them were filled with things for her, and the other 2 were given to her mother to pack up the household utensils. It seemed that the top priority now was to hurry to Shiju City. There was bound to be a place that sold blank talismans. When Xiao Zhongxing returned, he saw the little lass squatting under a tree at the side. She was holding a rather good-looking peach in both hands and munching on it happily. Xiao Zhongxing couldn't help but laugh. This was how a child should act. Normally, when Jojo acted like a little adult, she looked especially serious. She didn't look like a carefree child at all. Second uncle, eat a peach. Arbor handed him one, and then continued to munch on her own peach. As expected of a paradise, it was truly delicious. The peach flesh melted in her mouth, and the peach juice was sweet but not greasy. After eating it, the fragrance lingered in her teeth and cheeks, and the aftertaste was endless. Xiaomu wiped her small hands and suddenly felt a stream of hot air rapidly circulating in her mystic meridians. The little fellow was stunned for a moment and then quickly sat down. This wandering stream of hot air quickly transformed into bits of mystic energy. It scattered in her mystic meridians and finally returned to her dantian. Arbor had been observing her dantian from the inside, so she could see it clearly now. A mystic domain the size of an olive pit suddenly appeared at the roots of that wilted sapling. It only flashed for a moment before it absorbed the bits of rich mystic energy. However, at least 2/3 of the mystic energy was absorbed by the sapling's roots. It turned out that the mystic domain didn't disappear. It was just absorbed by the sapling's roots. Arbor wished she could jump up and howl. This tree was indeed strange and abnormal. It really was absorbing her mystic energy. Mystic energy. Just now, she had painstakingly accumulated a bit of mystic energy and finally managed to circulate it in her mystic meridians. In the end, more than half of it ended up in the sapling's stomach. Why? Why did it have to eat meat while she could only drink soup? Xiao Mu was extremely depressed. Fortunately, after the slight impact of the hot air, the mystic meridians in her body seemed to be a little thicker than before. A level 4 mystic cultivator. Xiao Mu's eyes lit up. She had unknowingly advanced. What was going on? Could it be related to that peach? Although the amount of profound energy earlier wasn't much, but the quality was extremely rich. Every drop of profound energy was comparable to the thin, profound energy stored in her body. Could it be that cultivation advancement was closely related to the concentration of profound energy cultivated in the profound veins? Arbor supported her small chin with one hand and thought carefully. That spiritual tree seemed to be only interested in the rich Xian energy of the outside world. For example, just now, and also previously when she absorbed the Xian energy of the entire paradise in the secret realm, she probably didn't even drink the broth at that time, as it all went into the little tree's stomach. As for his daily training of his profound veins, the profound energy that he cultivated was extremely thin and most likely would not be able to enter the eyes of the enlightened tree, so it had no interest in coming over to snatch it. After figuring this out, Arbor couldn't help but chuckle. Then, there was no then. She couldn't snatch the tree, so crying was useless. When she turned around, she saw second uncle open his eyes and jump up in excitement. Jojo, second uncle, discovered that after eating this peach, his body cultivation broke through to the 3rd level. Second uncle has been stuck at this level for a very long time. I didn't expect. Second uncle was so excited that he couldn't even finish his sentence. Chapter 101. Only those who had truly become a body cultivator would know how painful the body forging stage was. In order to strengthen their bodies and obtain strength that was stronger than normal people, they had to put in much more effort than mystic cultivators. Mystic cultivators simply couldn't understand this kind of ordeal. Mystic cultivators could be said to be a race deeply favored by the heavens. Normally, as long as one became a mystic cultivator, their physique would improve greatly. While cultivating mystic energy, it would also gradually strengthen their physique, so there was simply no need to go through the extra step of body forging. On the other hand, body cultivators completely relied on external forces to continuously increase their resistance to pressure and improve their physique after undergoing hellish training. Body cultivators advanced very slowly. Every transformation of the physical body depended on one's constitution. Some people with poor constitutions would stay at the first level of body, forging for their entire lives. But this time, after eating this peach, Qiao Zhongxing suddenly realized that he had painlessly transitioned to the third level of body forging. It was truly a cultivation experience that he had never had before. Such a comfortable advancement caused him to be a bit stupefied even now, thinking that he was in a dream. One had to know that he had been stuck at the second level of body forging for a full 3 years. It was quite inconceivable that he had advanced so quickly. On the other hand, Arbor didn't feel anything after suddenly advancing to a level 4 mystic cultivator. Her face was expressionless and calm as usual. Heh, what was there to be excited about? If she had taken all of the mystic energy in the paradise for her own use that day, let alone a level 4 mystic cultivator, she might have even become a level 6 or level 7 mystic cultivator. Thinking about how unkind the spirit tree was, Xiao Mu's heart felt stifled. Arbor's brows involuntarily twitched when she realized that her second uncle had happily picked her up. To be honest, she was already in her 30s, so she really didn't like other people picking her up for no reason. Qiao Zhongxing didn't carry her for too long and placed her on the carriage with a chuckle. He jumped onto the carriage and whipped the horse, causing the carriage to gallop back to the village. After sending Arbor home, Qiao Zhongxing immediately turned back and led the remaining 5 yellow-maned horses home. Wei Ziqin prepared a table of dishes and invited Xiao Zhongbong into the courtyard to drink with him. Arbor was not hungry for the time being, so he walked out with a horse in each hand. Xiao Zhongbong stared at his eldest daughter's back with a complicated gaze. Qiao Zhongxing took a sip of the bamboo wine and narrowed his eyes. He glanced at Xiao Zhongbong and asked, "Big brother, what's wrong with you?" "Jojo, that kid." Xiao Zhongbong heaved a long sigh. This child had changed too much. Sometimes, he was so unfamiliar that he couldn't help but feel apprehensive. Xiao Zhongxing put down his chopsticks and shook his head at his older brother. "Big brother, it's not that I want to criticize you, but Jojo is such a sensible and good child. It's hard to find one even with a lantern. What are you dissatisfied with?" "Today, your sister-in-law told me that she will move out of the village in 2 days." Xiao Zhongbong's expression was complicated. When he first heard this, he thought that his wife was joking with him. They had lived in Quoto village for so many years and had always been living well. How could they move out just like that? Xiao Zhongxing rubbed his nose. "I heard about this too. So be it. This isn't a good place anyway. Big brother, let me tell you." When Arbor was far away, she threw the Qiao brothers' long-winded conversation to the back of her mind. She led the horse into the nearby courtyard of Qiao Lu's house. Qiao Lu's aunt heard the noise and quickly walked out. "Jojo is here?" Chapter 102. Sixth Aunt Xiao welcomed Arbor in and said with a bleak and bitter smile, "Jojo, you're so considerate, coming to visit your sister Xiaoya again. She's in her room, but she still doesn't want to see anyone." The incident that happened at the Quoto village market that day was still vivid in his mind. 12-year-old Xiaoya was publicly humiliated by hyenas. Her clothes were nearly torn to shreds, and too much of her skin was exposed in front of people. Although she was the victim, in the eyes of the closed-off Quoto village villagers, Xiaoya was already an impure woman. 2 days ago, there were even a few ignorant village women who clamored about burning Xiaoya to death to purify Quoto village. He really didn't know what those people's brains were made of. Xiaoya didn't dare to go out at all during this period. She couldn't face the villagers pointing and gossiping, and even more couldn't face that humiliating experience directly. Arbor sighed. If Xiaoya didn't dare to walk out herself, no one could help her. Although the current world was relatively tolerant of women, this was only because women were mystic cultivators, and Xiaoya was only a normal person. Old Xiao and Sixth Aunt Xiao were both good people. In the past, when their family lacked food and clothing, Sixth Aunt Xiao would often help their family. Now that the zombie outbreak was imminent, Arbor also wanted to help them as much as he could. As for the other villagers, at her age, she truly couldn't care too much. Even if she went door to door and earnestly persuaded the villagers to leave, they would only think that she was crazy. They might even think that she was possessed by a ghost and want to burn her again. Everyone had their own fate, so she hoped that they would be able to fend for themselves. Jojo, come sit. Sixth Aunt Xiao wiped her hands on her apron and pulled Arbor to sit down. Your sixth uncle went out to pick vegetables and hasn't returned yet. Jojo, these two horses of yours are? Sixth Aunt Xiao had already seen Arbor leading the two horses in, so she couldn't help but look puzzled. Arbor had already tied up the horses in the courtyard and said to Sixth Aunt Xiao, Sixth Aunt, our family will be leaving Quoto Village the day after tomorrow. How about you and Sixth Uncle bring Sister Xiaoya along? Maybe Sister Xiaoya's mood will improve after leaving Quoto Village. Why are you moving? Jojo's sixth aunt couldn't help but be surprised. Then she smiled bitterly and shook her head. Jojo, sixth aunt and your sixth uncle have been rooted in this village for decades. Where else can we move to? Don't worry, your sister Xiaoya is just a little stubborn. I'll go and comfort her more, and she'll be fine soon. Arbor was not so optimistic. She clearly knew that ordinary people like Xiao Lu and Xiao Lu were vulnerable in front of a zombie. That thing would kill their family of 3. She couldn't help but advise her again, but sixth Aunt Xiao only comforted her not to think too much. She only said that after this critical juncture, the family would definitely get better. She didn't have any intention of leaving Quoto Village. Arbor sighed. He had no choice but to leave 2 horses for their family. Xiao Lu's wife was so scared that she repeatedly waved her hand and said no. Although sixth Aunt Xiao was ignorant, she also knew that the price of an ordinary horse was usually about 20 or 30 taels. How could she accept such a generous gift from Arbor? Unexpectedly, Arbor didn't wait for her to elaborate. She waved her hand and ran out of her house like a wisp of smoke. Even when she returned to the door of her house, Arbor's mood was still heavy. Her mood was indescribably grave. She looked up at the sky and saw that dusk was heavy. A jet-black cloud stretched across the horizon. It looked like it was going to rain later. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The sound of thunder was accompanied by bean-sized raindrops that pitter-pattered against the wooden window lattice. Arbor lowered the window partition. When she closed the window, she couldn't help but look at the pitch-black horizon that was like the night sea. Vaguely, she seemed to see a large bird flapping its huge wings gliding across the horizon. Arbor was stunned. Something flashed through her mind like lightning. Chapter 103. Cuckoo. The cries of the nighthawks made one's heart tremble under the pitch-black night sky. 150 kilometers away from the capital, on a muddy path, there was a funeral procession of more than 10 people braving the drizzle. The procession slowly moved forward, paper money fluttering in the air like snowflakes. After walking for a while, the rain started to get heavier. Under the dark sky, a large bird spread its wings and flew past with an ear-piercing cry. The people at the front of the funeral procession suddenly stopped. A flock of black crows fluttered in their direction, causing them to hastily reach out to sweep them away. Suddenly, an ice-cold, pale hand reached out from under the coffin lid. Someone in the procession let out a shriek. The coffin fell to the ground with a thud, making a dull sound. Under the dim starlight, a pot-bellied, long-haired, white-clothed woman stood there. She slowly raised her head. When she saw the shocked expressions of the crowd, whose teeth were chattering, she didn't hesitate to charge forward with a roar. A horse procession braved the rain on the official road. Yu Shou, wearing a straw raincoat, pulled on the reins. He frowned and listened for a while before patting his horse to follow Prince Imo. Master, did you hear any strange sounds? Prince Imo nodded. It wasn't just strange sounds. A faint smell of blood was transmitted over with the wind, allowing him to clearly know that there was an unforeseen event ahead. Everyone, be careful. Yu Shou waved his hand and ordered the 20 or so black-clothed youths accompanying him. They were about to reach the capital. With those people's temperaments, if they didn't make a move now, they wouldn't have another chance. Prince Imo absent-mindedly swept his eyes over the front, an ice-cold smile on his lips. He didn't wear a straw raincoat on his thin, ethereal white clothes. However, when the drizzle drifted to his side, it evaporated into smoke and instantly disappeared without a trace. The journey was extremely boring. His few brothers only did assassinations and assassinations. They couldn't do anything new. They weren't as interesting as his little wooden baby. When he recalled that stoic face, the smile on Imo Lian's lips deepened slightly. TSK, I'm thinking of the little guy again. Annoying. A group of more than 20 riders galloped forward, covered in dust, on the official road. However, as the rain gradually increased, visibility became very low. Suddenly, a woman with a bowed head and a big belly jumped out from a muddy path and blocked the way. Yushio hurriedly reined in his horse so that it would not collide with her. The group of youths were no longer hotheads. The road was vast at night, and a strange woman suddenly appeared on the dirt road. No matter how one looked at it, it was strange. Everyone immediately tensed up and silently prepared for battle. The woman was wearing a white dress that was stained with mud. Her long hair was wet from the rain and covered her face. His walking posture was very strange. His feet and hands were very stiff. Step by step, he walked down the dirt road, making people feel a little scared. Everyone, be careful. Yushio unsheathed his sword and took a few steps forward, pointing his sword at the woman. Halt! Who dares to play tricks here? Prince Imo raised his eyebrows and glanced at the woman who was blocking his way. In the middle of the night, he didn't have the leisure to waste time with a woman of unknown origin. She doesn't want to leave. Help her. The crown prince's indifferent voice slowly sounded. Yushio immediately raised his sword. In the blink of an eye, the woman abruptly raised her head. Her pale face was stained with blood, and her eyes were strangely protruding. She opened her mouth and let out a ghostly howl. Without waiting for Yushio to act, Prince Imo already waved his sleeves. Chapter 104. After the sound of the wind, the pale figure in the middle of the road fell down heavily. Crown Prince Imo unhappily smoothed out a crease on his sleeve, a faint sneer on his face. The assassin this time's makeup looks like a ghost's. I wonder which idiot's handiwork came from. Do you think you're a ghost just because you turned into a ghost? Do I look like I'm afraid of ghosts? What a joke. Yushio silently twitched the corner of his mouth, raised his hand with a cold face, and said to the others, let's continue. Wait. Prince Mo's cold voice sounded again at this time. Everyone tightened their reins in unison, waiting for orders in a well-trained manner. In front of them, the woman who fell on the ground and was covered in mud was slowly crawling up with great difficulty. Her movements were very slow, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard from time to time. Haha, this is a bit interesting. Imo Lian nonchalantly raised her eyebrows, her phoenix eyes moving slightly, smiling as she stared at the woman in front of her. That woman's left hand was unnaturally twisted, and after struggling to crawl up from the ground, she seemed to have identified Prince Imo as her target. She grimaced and staggered forward. But before she could pounce forward again, she was swept away by Prince Imo like a fly. But very quickly, the woman crawled up again. But her right leg was crippled, and her movements were very slow. Her entire body was covered in mud, and the original color of her white clothes couldn't be distinguished. Imo Lian was very clear that although 2 consecutive sweeps seemed light, in reality, even if he only used a fraction of his strength, it wasn't something a normal person could withstand. So, this woman in front of her really wasn't a human. Protect the Emperor. Protect the Emperor. Yushio saw that woman crawl up from the ground again, and immediately felt a slight chill down his spine, and couldn't help but shout loudly, What are you nervous about? Imo Lian indifferently swept a glance at Yushio, raised her wrist, and pointed in the direction of the woman. A solid ball of fire flew in front of the woman at the speed of light, and immediately pierced through her forehead, quickly burning inside her body. Although this was not the first time they had seen it, Yushio and the others still could not help but watch the scene in front of them with fear and trepidation. The Crown Prince's methods were indeed cruel. Compared to his immortal-like appearance, his gentle and elegant face, it was poles apart. He's really dead. A faint voice floated out from his lips. It was not hard to guess that there was a trace of disappointment in it. Yushio's head was filled with black lines for a moment. My lord, your flame projectile is so smooth that it can directly burn a person from head to toe into ashes. Not even a trace of brain juice is left. What can you do if you don't die? If Xiaomu were here, she would definitely curse him for being crazy. How many people had lost their lives to the corpse puppets without being able to put up any resistance? Yet, this man had taken care of them in a matter of minutes. As Imo Lien looked at the woman who had been burned into a pile of ashes, he subconsciously tapped his chin with his horsewhip as he muttered to himself, "Little fellow, could this be the monster that you reminded me to keep a respectful distance from? Your Highness." Returned to the capital. Imo Lien's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. Thinking of her mother and younger brother, she wondered if they were in any danger. With a light flick of the horsewhip, the group quickly disappeared into the night. Near the official road, on the muddy dirt road, there were more than 10 corpses lying haphazardly. A gloomy wind blew miserably. Suddenly, the corpses opened their bulging eyes at the same time, letting out ghostly wails and wolf howls at the dark horizon. Chapter 105. That night, it was raining cats and dogs in Kwoto village. Arbor closed the wooden window. He had been feeling uneasy, so he laid on the bed with his clothes on and listened to the sound of the rain hitting the window frame. Little Linner, who was beside him, was wearing a honey-colored jacket and holding a juicy peach in her arms. She was sprawled out in her sleep and was even snoring softly. Arbor tossed and turned, but he couldn't fall asleep. In the latter half of the night, he heard a roar that sounded like a human coming from the east of the village, followed by a scream that pierced through the night sky. Arbor's heart shrank as if a stone had been thrown into a lake in his heart. That sound seemed to have come from Wu Yinjin's house. Arbor cursed inwardly and rolled over to sit up. He pulled his little sister into his arms and hurriedly helped her get dressed in a flurry. Little Xiao Lin had trouble getting dressed with a peach in her arms. Arbor reached out to take her peach, but the foodie hugged it tightly and even whimpered in her sleep, as if she was about to cry. The latter was speechless. Xiao Mu was at her wit's end and could only hastily drape a jacket over her body. She also casually grabbed a small blanket, directly wrapping both her and Tao inside. Arbor picked up the little foodie and pushed open the door. He happened to come face to face with Second Uncle, who had hurriedly put on his clothes and rushed over. Second Uncle must have been startled awake by the sound. Arbor hurriedly stuffed the little foodie into Second Uncle's arms. "Second Uncle, hurry and wake Brother Xiaohu up. Don't pack anything. We have to leave the village immediately. We have to leave now. Take them to the carriage and wait for us." Jojo. Xiao Zhongxing vaguely felt that something had happened, but seeing Arbor leave in a hurry, he didn't have time to ask. A sense of oppression pressed down on him, causing him to involuntarily quicken his steps. He hurriedly woke his son up from the bed, hastily packed a few pieces of underwear, and braved the heavy rain to send the two children to the carriage first. "Xiaohu, look after little sister. Father will go pick up your eldest sister." Xiao Zhongxing left this sentence and rushed into the rain again. Xiao, who had already woken up from his daze. Although he didn't know what had happened, seeing his father's nervous expression, he couldn't help but tense up as well. He reached out and hugged the sleeping Xiao Lin tightly, clenching his fists as he waited in the carriage. Meanwhile, Xiaomu quickly rushed to her parents' room. Without caring about etiquette, she kicked open the door. The scene inside shocked her greatly, causing her heart to rise to her throat. He saw a rotten hand coming in through the window, desperately trying to grab something. If it weren't for his father's quick reflexes and throwing a teapot at the head of the bed, that hand would have grabbed his mother's arm. "Xiao Qin, you go first." Xiao Zhongbong pushed his wife off the bed. Arbor rushed into the room and took a look at his father. His eyes flickered and he immediately released a burst of profound energy, cutting off the rotten hand that was about to grab his father. "Don't touch." Although the level 1 zombie hadn't evolved yet, so nothing would happen even if it was caught, it was best not to take the risk. Arbor strode forward and helped his mother up from the ground. He said to his parents, who were only wearing underwear, "Let's go. Let's leave this place first." Xiao Zhongbong put on his outer robe and quickly walked to the mother and daughter's side. Wei Ziqin was also hastily putting on her clothes. The three of them were running out the door when they heard Second Uncle call out from the door. "Second Uncle, why are you here?" Arbor was shocked. Thinking of the two defenseless children still in the carriage, he hurriedly said, let's go. Chapter 106. The four of them ran all the way to the entrance of the courtyard and saw the carriage quietly parked there. The curtain of the carriage was half open, and Xiao Hu, with a cautious and serious expression, was holding Xiao Lin and looking outside from time to time. When he saw them running over in the pouring rain, Xiao Hu's expression visibly relaxed, and he excitedly called out, "Father, eldest uncle, eldest aunt, get down." Arbor suddenly let out an angry roar. Xiao Hu instinctively hugged Xiao Lin and rolled into the carriage. Bang! In the blink of an eye, a stiff figure emitting a strange smell suddenly fell from the top of the carriage. The loud noise startled the horses in front, and they neighed uneasily. The monster used a lot of strength, and its foot actually pierced through the bottom of the carriage. One of its legs was stuck in the hole, and it stiffly pulled for a long time. Xiao Hu sucked in a breath of cold air. He saw the monster turn its head, and a pair of bulging eyes on its deathly pale face stared fixedly at him and Xiao Lin. Xiao Hu was extremely flustered for a moment, and he only felt his whole body emitting a whoosh of cold air from inside out. Roar! The monster roared and reached out its claws to claw at the two of them. Xiao Hu hugged Xiao Lin and scrambled backwards, grabbing the things in the carriage and throwing them at the monster. The bags were scattered, and some clothes fell out. The monster's sharp claws immediately tore them to pieces. Little Hu! Xiao Lin whoosh! An iron arrow with astonishing power shot through the monster's head in the nick of time. All of its movements immediately stopped, and the monster fell face down on the ground, unable to get up again. The adults' anxious hearts finally relaxed a little. They turned to look at the little girl holding the crossbow at the side. They only felt that under the cold rain, the little girl's face was as cold as the moon, even colder than the rain. For no reason, it made people shudder from the bottom of their hearts. Get in the carriage. Xiao Mu did not wait for them to recover from their daze and directly jumped onto the carriage first. She effortlessly sent the level 1 zombie inside the carriage, flying with a flying kick. The zombie fell heavily on the ground, its face facing the sky. Wei Ziqin looked at it in a panic and couldn't help but exclaim, "Isn't this the one from Hazy's family? Third uncle who was buried 2 days ago? What is he doing? Did it crawl out of the ground?" When Wei Ziqin thought of this, she immediately felt cold all over and couldn't help but tremble. "Sister-in-law, get in the car first," Xiao Zhongxing hurriedly urged. He watched as his sister-in-law got into the car before jumping into the driver's seat. With a flick of his wrist, he straightened the reins. Xiao Zhongbong didn't need him to say anything. He jumped onto another horse and followed the carriage in the rain. Under the pouring rain, a horse accompanied by a carriage quickly rushed out of the small courtyard. The village was in an uproar. Many villagers screamed and ran out of their houses. When they saw Arbor's carriage, they chased after it and shouted, "Second uncle, let's go." Arbor took Xiao Lin in his arms and ordered calmly. The condition of their 2 carriages wasn't very good either. Not only did the zombie destroy the roof of the carriage, but it also stepped through the bottom of the carriage. Now that it was raining heavily outside and drizzling inside, everything was wet and very uncomfortable. Xiao Zhongxing wasn't stupid. He naturally knew that they couldn't even take care of themselves right now. He quickly whipped the horse, causing it to gallop forward in pain and hurry towards the entrance of the village. The calmest was Xiao Lin. The commotion outside was so loud, but this girl was sleeping soundly with a peach in her arms. There were no signs of her waking up at all. She really was a big-hearted child. Chapter 107. Xiao Zhongxing yelled and made the horse speed up, riding side by side with Xiao Zhongbong. The two of them glanced at each other and saw a monster pounce on a village woman who was madly running forward from behind. A pair of withered hands tightly strangled the village woman's neck. The woman let out an ear-piercing shriek and waved her fists and legs desperately. Before they could take a closer look, the carriage had already sped past them as fast as lightning. Behind them was a group of wailing and waving ants, who were continuously shouting, "Let us get on the carriage and please take us along." Xiao Zhongbong pursed his lips and couldn't help but turn around to take a look. He said in a hoarse voice, "Second brother, Eldest brother, we can't bring so many people. Qiao Zhongxing's face was cold and stiff as he suddenly whipped the horse, causing the pained horse to gallop forward madly. Arbor hugged Shaolin and sat in a corner of the carriage, avoiding the rainwater that poured in. His thin brows were tightly knitted together, and his small hands involuntarily clenched under his sleeves. 4 days, a full 4 days ahead of schedule. Originally, she had planned to set off the day after tomorrow and reach Shiju City within 2 days. At that time, the zombie disaster would have just erupted, and their family would have already settled down in Shiju City. But now, her plan truly couldn't keep up with the changes. She didn't know what went wrong, but the zombie outbreak in this life had actually been abruptly brought forward by so many days. It simply caught her off guard. Aya, Mother Wei Ziqin suddenly cried out in alarm. What's wrong, Mother? Arbor returned to his senses. Is it that you haven't packed your things? Don't worry about that. We'll talk about the future in the future. No. Wei Ziqin was anxious and regretful. I've already packed most of the things at home, and everything that can be brought has been placed in the talisman. It's that Xiaoyao girl. We ran in such a hurry that we left her at home. Xiaomu had thought that something big had happened, so she relaxed slightly upon hearing this. It's fine, Mom. I already sent someone to inform her. I also left 2 horses at home. Don't worry, they will catch up very soon. With stay-up-late skills, these level 1 corpse puppets were nothing more than toys for him. As for Xiaoyao, Arbor had already noticed that although this girl was about the same age as Qiao Hu, she was not ordinary. She should have some skills in her hands. Otherwise, the Tycoon Crown Prince would not have placed her by her side. Upon hearing this, Wei Ziqin felt relieved. She nodded and said, Child, thank goodness you're so considerate. Mother is really useless. Look at how flustered she is. She doesn't remember anything. Arbor smiled bitterly. A lifetime of suffering in exchange for thoughtfulness. Sister, what exactly are those monsters? How can they be so scary? Qiao Hu curled his small body up next to Wei Ziqin and picked up a dry cloth to wipe his face and body. Just now, when the monster stepped down from the roof of the car, his heart almost stopped beating. He was still in a state of shock. Brother Xiao Hu, those things are called corpse puppets. Arbor did not hide it from them. Mother, you're right. They're all corpses. They mutated from the corpses that were buried within half a month. These things move very slowly, but their strength is shocking. You can't kill them just by hitting their limbs, body, or even heart. You have to hit their heads first. Oh, sister. I know. That's why you shot his head with the crossbow and killed him. Xiao Hu nodded in realization. Yes. Chapter 108. These zombies are still only level 1 zombies. As long as you don't get surrounded by a large number of them, you can quickly escape. Xiao Mu explained calmly. They have boundless strength and will strangle people to death when they catch them. People who are strangled to death by level 1 zombies have a high chance of mutating into zombies, Arbor explained softly. But even if they only have 1 breath left, they won't mutate. These lowest level zombies don't actually have much killing power, but they can gather and attack in groups, so it's best to avoid them. Wei Ziqin and Xiao Hu nodded as they listened. At this time, the carriage had already reached the village entrance and left a large number of villagers far behind. Seeing that they were about to leave the village, 2 voices suddenly rushed out from the side, crying out in surprise and joy, Eldest brother, second brother, hurry and save mother. Eldest brother, second brother, Xiao Wenwan shrieked, almost crying tears of joy. At this time, Xiao Wenwan looked abnormally disheveled. Her hair was disheveled and her face was pale. Not only was there a deep red handprint on her neck, but her clothes were also completely soaked from the rain, as if she had rolled around in the rain a few times. Without waiting for Qiao Zhongxing to come back to his senses, Qiao Zhongbong immediately jumped off the horse, supported his mother and sister, and said anxiously, Mother, little sister, hurry and get in the carriage. Let's go quickly. Okay. Old Madam nodded shakily, tears smearing her face. This was a calamity in her old age. If she hadn't been so angry at that damned girl Arbor that she couldn't sleep for half the night and hurriedly got up and dragged her daughter away as soon as she heard the commotion, she probably would have died in the hands of those monsters. Xiao Wenwan also felt that she was extremely unlucky. She had lived comfortably for more than 10 years and had never suffered like this. Now that the situation was urgent, she didn't need second brother's urging. She quickly helped her mother into the carriage with eldest brother and followed. As soon as she got into the carriage, Xiao Wenwan looked up at the hole in the roof and shrieked, "The roof of the carriage is broken. How can people still sit in it?" Arbor hugged Xiaolin, while Xiao Hu snuggled up to Wei Ziqin. The four of them sat in the carriage and occupied the best seats. Once the mother and daughter boarded the carriage, the originally small carriage became even more crowded. Only one person could sit at the door of the carriage, so the other person had to sit in the middle and forcibly get caught in the rain. The rain outside did not lessen in the slightest, and the water in the carriage was also pouring in. Sitting in the middle of the carriage was like sitting in the open air, with the wind howling and the rain falling. Just thinking about it made one feel miserable. Xiao Zhongbong looked embarrassed and snuck a peek at his eldest daughter's icy expression. How would he dare to ask them to give up their seats? Thus, he urged, "Little sister, hurry and sit properly. We still have to hurry on our way." Xiao Wenwan was so angry that her face turned green. Seeing that her brother didn't let her sisters-in-law and the others move aside, she could only sit down angrily. The rain fell on her body, and she immediately felt the entire world's malice towards her. Arbor hugged Xiaolin, and pulled the blanket tightly around her to block the wind. His gaze swept over this youngest aunt without any warmth, and he said faintly, "Please move your butt. Don't block the hole in the bottom of the carriage. After all, it's raining above, so the bottom has to leak as well. Otherwise, the carriage will soon have a river." When second Uncle Qiao Zhongxing, who was holding the reins, heard this, his old face twitched. He felt that it was inappropriate for him to laugh out loud in this dangerous situation. "But Jojo, you're teasing us with that stoic face of yours. Are you sure you're not here to be funny? Don't worry, my friends." Chapter 109. Xiao Wenwan was so angry that her face was a little crooked. She pursed her lips and moved slightly to the side as she glared hatefully at Arbor. Compared to the mother and daughter's clean and refreshing appearances, she was so dirty and disheveled that she couldn't even bear to look straight at her. She had encountered a terrifying monster along the way that was strangling her neck and almost strangling her to death. Fortunately, her mother had held her breath and struck it from behind with a stick, allowing the mother and daughter to find an opportunity to escape hand in hand. Fortunately, although the monster was extremely strong, its movements were abnormally slow and stiff, allowing them to escape. Otherwise, they wouldn't be alive right now. Looking at Wei Ziqin and her daughters, other than their clothes being partially wet, their faces were clean and refreshed. They didn't appear to have stumbled at all, especially that child, Xiaolin, who was still sleeping soundly. Xiao Wenwan didn't know what to say. The outside world was turned upside down and everyone was exhausted from running for their lives. Yet this child could still sleep so soundly. There was really no one else like her. Qiao Zhongbong once again mounted the yellow-maned horse. Qiao Zhongxing also shook the reins and agilely urged the horse carriage forward. Arbor glanced back through the hollowed-out partition at the back of the carriage and saw Ao Yi leading Xiaoyao over on horseback. She hadn't been able to close her eyes after being tossed and turned for the better part of the night. At this moment, she felt a little sleepy, so Arbor simply leaned against the wall of the carriage and closed her eyes to take a nap. Xiao Wenwan furtively peeked at Xiao Mu and instantly felt that this girl was quite careless. She could still sleep at a time like this. She was so nervous that she was about to die, and her palms were still sweating coldly. Elderly Lady Qiao was old and was already exhausted from being tossed around for half a day. She listlessly leaned against the carriage door after boarding and didn't have the energy to say anything. For a moment, the carriage was silent. Only a clatter could be heard occasionally as second uncle whipped the horse to urge it to gallop. Through the heavy rain, a carriage carrying 6 people of all ages safely left the village and rushed in the direction of Shiju City. On the other side, The Crown Prince and the others were galloping. At dawn, Missouri Lian's group arrived at the north gate of Guanlan City. The commoners, who had come early in the morning to line up and quietly waited to enter the city to do business, hurriedly moved to the sides when they heard the sound of horse hooves. Many pairs of eyes curiously turned towards the direction from which the caravan had come, wanting to see which caravan was so early. They couldn't help but be stunned by what they saw. The handsome young man riding his horse was wearing a white robe that fluttered in the wind. His black hair was loosely tied up with a light golden ribbon that hung down to his waist. His phoenix-like eyes roamed about, like the radiance of the stars that filled the sky. It was as if a god had descended into the mortal world, noble and beautiful. What a charming and handsome young man. Yushio followed closely behind, patting his horse to catch up. At the first moment, he raised the golden token in his hand, his tone solemn and high. His Highness the Crown Prince has returned to the capital. Quickly open the city gates to welcome him. The two lowly soldiers on the city gate tower had already seen the appearance of the person who had come and immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Who would have thought that this great master would return to the city so early today? In their haste, they almost rolled down the city gate tower. In a panic, they called out in unison, "Welcome back to the capital, Your Highness the Crown Prince." "Welcome, Your Highness." "Hurry, hurry. Quickly open the city gates. Hurry." Urgent voices were transmitted from the city gate tower to various parts of the city. Immediately, the city guards pulled the heavy iron chain capstan. With the combined strength of a dozen people, they pushed the city gates open inch by inch with great difficulty. Prince Imo turned his head and glanced indifferently at Yushio. Then, he rode into the city without a word. Behind him, aside from Yushio, the group of youths followed the crown prince into the imperial city noisily. Chapter 110. Yushio spurred his horse towards a nearby city guard. "You, come here." The captain of the city guard was drenched in cold sweat as he fearfully stepped forward. This was the captain of the Dragon Saliva Guard, a true blue third-rank official and favored by His Highness the Crown Prince. How could he dare slight him? He immediately bowed respectfully and humbly lowered his head. "What are your orders, my lord?" "Pass on His Highness' orders. From now on, everyone entering and leaving the city must be strictly interrogated. If anyone is found with a pale face, bulging eyes, stiff limbs, or slow movements, arrest them first." The captain hurriedly nodded like he was pounding garlic. "Yes, yes, yes. Everything will be as my lord says." This lowly official will give the order to strictly investigate and guard the place to ensure that no slip-ups occur. Yushio nodded and immediately turned to enter the city. He still needed to hurry back to the Dragon Saliva Guard and deploy more people to search the city to ensure the peace of the capital. The Crown Prince had said that this might not be a special case. They still didn't know what that mutated monster was and needed to investigate further. On the second floor of a jewelry store near the northern city gate, a brothel leaned against the window. A young man in embroidered robes leaned against the window and lightly pressed down on the folding fan in his hand. He suddenly laughed and said, "My sixth brother has made such a big move as soon as he returned to the capital. Go investigate what the captain of the Dragon Saliva Guard is busy with." "Master, His Highness the Second Prince was on the second floor of Rui Pavilion just now." Emolian had rushed to the imperial palace as soon as she entered the city. Hearing this, she only tilted her head slightly and raised her brows nonchalantly. Let him be. It was just a clown. He didn't have the heart to care about anything else. The group quickly rushed to the central palace's bedchamber. At this time, Queen Zhao, who symbolized the center of power in Imo Kingdom's harem, was about 30 years old. Her appearance was dignified and elegant. She was only wearing a watery red floral undergarment, and her hair was tied up in a loose bun. She was leaning against the couch listlessly. A shrewd old nanny dressed in a floral robe quickly walked in and curtsied towards Queen Zhao. "Your Highness." News came from Sephora Flower Palace, saying. She took 2 steps forward and whispered to Queen Zhao, "That person caused another ruckus this morning and secretly executed a little maid." Pfft. Queen Zhao sneered. "What is it this time?" There was a hint of a smile in the old nanny's eyes. It was said that when that girl was helping that person with her makeup, she picked out a strand of white hair. Queen Zhao immediately laughed, but her eyes were filled with coldness. What a pretentious woman. How did the others react? The old mama pursed her lips and smiled. Every palace has different reactions, but Imperial concubine Lin is the most interesting. She sent someone to deliver a box of hair oil to that person. She said, "Ahem, it was concocted by a famous doctor to treat white hair and baldness." Queen Zhao could already imagine the expression on that person's face when he received this gift. "Your Highness, Your Highness." Her personal chief palace maid, He quickly walked in with a joyful expression. She hurriedly bowed and said, "Nyang Nyang, this servant just heard that His Highness the Crown Prince and his party have already returned to the capital." "What?" Queen Zhao immediately became spirited, her eyes filled with a gentle light. She cheerfully stood up. Quick, quickly help this queen dress. My son has returned, so I want to personally welcome him." The accompanying palace maids and nannies came forward to serve her with smiles. Just as they were busying themselves, they heard a report from outside that Prince Imo had come to the central palace to pay his respects. This child had just returned, so he definitely hadn't rushed back to the Eastern Palace to change his clothes and wash off the dust on his body before hurrying over to her. Thinking of how filial her son was, Queen Zhao's eyes were filled with smiles. She had long tossed the vexing matters of the other palaces to the highest heavens. Chapter 111. Imo Lian quickly entered and immediately saw that her smiling mother was safe and sound. Her heart relaxed slightly, and she took a few steps forward, lifting her robe to kneel. "Mother Queen, my son, quickly get up." Queen Zhao hastily went forward to personally help her up. "This child, look, you've been rushing about outside for so long, so you definitely haven't had a good rest. Your face has gotten thinner." Imo Lian helplessly glanced at her mother, then helped her sit down. "Mother Queen, did anything happen in the palace these past 2 days? Everything is fine here, Your Highness the Crown Prince. Please be at ease." Queen Zhao's personal nanny handed over a cup of tea with a smile, then retreated a few steps to stand behind the queen. Amen. Mother is fine here." Queen Zhao smiled and said, "Child, you must be very tired after coming back. You should return to the Eastern Palace to rest first. We can talk again tomorrow, so there's no rush. Look at you, you have dark circles under your eyes. You've been traveling day and night, right?" As the mother and son were talking, a shrill cry came from outside the hall. Amidst hurried footsteps, a young eunuch with disheveled hair scrambled in from outside. As soon as he saw Queen Zhao, he repeatedly kowtowed and cried with snot and tears streaming down his face, "Save me, Your Highness." Queen Zhao's graceful and elegant face instantly darkened, and she reprimanded in displeasure, "Who are you? How dare you trespass into the central palace?" Without needing Queen Zhao's order, the patrolling guards who had received the news had already rushed in with sabers and spears. They surrounded the young eunuch who had barged into Queen Zhao's bedchamber without permission, scaring that unlucky fellow into trembling all over. "Spare me, Your Highness, spare me." The young eunuch repeatedly kowtowed. "Your Highness, this is Consort Zheng's servant, Xiao Nz." The old nanny behind Queen Zhao moved to her master's side and whispered. Queen Zhao was even more displeased when she heard this. She was just talking to her son. So where did this mad dog come from and make a scene as soon as it came in? It really made her lose her appetite. "Xiao Nz, why aren't you serving your master at Sephora Flower Palace? What are you yelling here for?" Your Highness, Your Highness." Xiao Nz kowtowed like he was pounding garlic as he wept bitterly. A little palace made in Sephora Flower Palace suddenly mutated. She had boundless strength and strangled everyone she saw. She strangled 2 or 3 palace maids and eunuchs to death in succession. Furthermore, those who were strangled to death also mutated into her appearance and continued to harm others in Sephora Flower Palace. The guards passing by were almost unable to restrain them. This lowly one risked his life to rush out and beg Your Highness to save his life. Emolian was slightly shocked. She raised her eyebrows and asked straightforwardly, "That little palace maid from before was a corpse mutation, right?" In this palace, it was normal for a few eunuchs and palace maids to die every day. This was especially true for that person from Sephora Flower Palace. Relying on her father's favor, she was usually very arrogant. If the palace maids and eunuchs by her side did anything that didn't go her way, it was very common for her to beat or kill them. Xiaoyan Zi was startled when he heard this. He kept his head down and didn't utter a word. Queen Zhao's gaze hardened. She slapped the sandalwood table hard and angrily said, "Did you not understand the crown prince's question?" Xiaoyan Zi couldn't stand being frightened at all and confessed in a few words. The mutated little palace maid was the grooming maid who had been beaten to death by Consort Zheng early this morning. She had originally planned to drag her out and bury her in a mass grave at noon, but she hadn't expected such an unforeseen event to occur. Huifeng, the crown prince called out softly. A black-clothed youth with sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes immediately appeared beside the crown prince and bowed in greeting. "Your Highness, quickly bring 20 dragon saliva guards to Sephora Flower Palace to deal with this matter. You must not allow this matter to spread," the crown prince instructed coldly. He had a bad premonition that this unforeseen event would spread sooner or later. Chapter 112. The situation was more serious than she had imagined, so Emolian didn't plan to hide it from her mother. She told her everything that had happened on the way back. Queen Zhao's face paled when she heard how dangerous it was for the crown prince to return to the city. She grabbed the crown prince's hand and asked, "Are you hurt?" "Mother, don't worry. Your son isn't hurt." Prince Emo comforted. "As for the source of this matter, I've already ordered Yushio to investigate. However, from the looks of it now, it should be related to the mutation of the undead. As a result, the city will need to be under martial law for several days and carefully search. The focus will be on the houses that have recently conducted funerals." Queen Zhao nodded repeatedly. "Mother, I'm afraid Guanlan City will be in chaos for a while. You and 12th brother should stay in the palace for the time being. Don't go out in the near future." "Mother knows." Queen Zhao frowned and said softly, "But you should be more careful when you leave the palace often." Emolian nodded and said a few more words to her mother. She then hurriedly bid farewell and headed in the direction of the imperial study. Since something like this had happened, she naturally had to report it to the great king. Otherwise, she would become the subject of ridicule. Emolian's pace was neither fast nor slow as he slowly walked on the quiet and secluded path filled with osmanthus flowers that were as white as snow. He had a premonition that this zombie transformation disaster had probably just begun. My Prince Su's section break, the rain had stopped, but the ground was a bit wet. Da-da-da. Only one horse and one carriage passed by on the empty street. The bustling streets of Anshantown were now empty. The stalls that had been set up on both sides of the street had all disappeared. The doors of the grain and bun shops had been smashed and the inside had been turned into a mess. It was too horrible to look at. Qiao Zhongxing sighed softly and pulled on the reins to stop the carriage. He turned his head to look inside the carriage. "Jojo, we've arrived at Anshantown." Arbor was in a daze from his sleep. When he heard his second uncle's call, he opened his tired eyes. He had only closed his eyes in the latter half of the night yesterday. He hadn't slept for more than 4 hours. The little foodie also woke up, but she had a full sleep. When she opened her eyes, she was full of energy and called out to her sister. Arbor was speechless. He simply put the little fellow in his mother's arms and put on his clothes. Then, he lifted the curtain of the carriage and jumped down. "Second uncle, let's rest here for a while." Second uncle had been on the road all night, so she had to let him rest for a while. Mississippi, Arbor turned his head and saw Xiao Yao running over with a small package in her arms. "There are steamed buns and water. Have some." "All right." Arbor nodded and looked behind her. He didn't see stay up late, so he knew he was hiding somewhere. "Second uncle, have a steamed bun." They came just in time. Qiao Zhongxing happened to be starving. Hearing this, he hurriedly reached out to take the 2 steamed buns and a bag of water. After Xiao Yao gave the food to Qiao Zhongbong, who was looking at her eagerly. She went back to the car to distribute the food. But soon, a discordant voice broke the happy meal. "You're going to let me eat this?" An octave higher voice came from the carriage. Eldest Miss Xiao, Xiao Wenwan, who had been holding in her anger all the way, finally exploded. "Pa!" She reached out and slapped the steamed bun from the old lady's hand. The bag of water spilled onto the old lady's hand. "Mother, how can I eat this kind of coarse and low-grade food? I might even get a stomachache." Xiao Wenwan didn't care how much blood was dripping from her mother's heart. She completely ignored her mother's longing gaze as she stared at the steamed bun on the ground. I won't. This was made by Xiao Yao last night. It's very clean. I won't get a stomachache." Chapter 113. Do you think I won't eat just because you said so? Such coarse food looks disgusting just by looking at it. Xiao Wenwan said with a look of disgust. Xiao Zhongxing, who was eating the steamed bun in big bites, choked slightly and lowered his head to look at the half-eaten steamed bun in his hand. "No, it's quite delicious. It's smooth and delicate. It's not bad." "Second brother, you're always like this. You can't be a person without any goals." Xiao Wenwan rolled her eyes at the foolish Xiao Zhongxing, then reached out to support the trembling elderly lady Xiao. "Mother, don't eat such coarse food. Let's get off the carriage. I remember that there's a restaurant in Anshantown with delicious food. Let's eat there." Xiao Zhongbong couldn't help but say, "Younger sister, we still have to hurry. Just make do with a few bites first. When we reach Shiju City, we'll—" "How can that be? Mother, let's go over there. I remember that restaurant is just around the corner." Arbor looked at this naive aunt in disbelief. She used to think that this woman was a little stupid, but now it seemed that she wasn't stupid but mentally retarded. Everyone in Anshantown had scattered like birds and beasts, so where was she going to find a restaurant chef to cook for them? Arbor raised her hand to stop Xiao Yao's persuasion. "Let her be. Xiao Yao, stay in the carriage and help me look after mother and younger sister. As for those two women, you don't have to worry about them." "Yes, young Mississippi," Xiao Yao nodded. Arbor turned around and said to Second Uncle, "Second Uncle, you rest here for a while. I'll go take a look across the street." Xiao Zhongxing chuckled and nodded. When Arbor walked past Xiao Zhongbong, she heard her father whisper, "Jojo, be careful. Come back quickly." "Oh," Arbor replied indifferently and ran across the street. Xiao Zhongbong, on the other hand, was stunned for a while. Suddenly, he said excitedly, "Zhongxing, did you hear Jojo say oh just now? She's talking to me." Recently, Jojo had been treating him like he was invisible. He didn't even look at him, let alone acknowledge him. Just thinking about it made his heart ache. Xiao Zhongxing glanced at him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Boss, how can there be any overnight feud between father and daughter? Don't worry, Jojo is very sensible. She's extraordinarily intelligent and knows a lot of things." "Xiao Yao, do you still have steamed buns?" Xiao Zhongxing called out to the carriage. Yes, there's a lot." Xiao Yao stuffed another steamed bun into Xiao Hu's hand before jumping out of the car and running towards Xiao Zhongxing and Xiao Qiao. Arbor ran all the way to the door of the opposite shop. He used the tip of his foot to rub the signboard that had fallen to the ground. Sure enough, it was a talisman shop. He kicked open the half-broken door in front of him and crawled in like a cat. The inside of the shop had long been rummaged through. Occasionally, a few talismans would fall to the ground. Arbor picked them up and looked at them. They didn't have any talisman power attached to them. He couldn't help but feel disappointed. Without talisman power, talismans couldn't be made. It seemed like this little shop was just hanging sheep's head to sell dog's meat, selling fake talismans to fool the world. What a waste of blank talisman paper. Arbor walked around the shop but didn't find anything. When he turned around, his gaze suddenly fixed on the bookshelf that had fallen to the ground. After the bookshelf fell, all the books fell to the ground in a mess. Only one book remained firmly on the shelf, not moving at all. No one would believe that it wasn't a trap. Arbor stepped forward and kicked the book. There was a soft sound behind him, and the wall opened to one side. Accompanied by a suppressed roar, a zombie suddenly darted out from behind the wall and pounced towards Arbor. Chapter 114. Arbor was standing not far from the bookshelf, so when the zombie scurried out, the two were only 3 steps away from each other. Roar! It opened its mouth to reveal fangs, and its entire face was distorted. Even though Xiao Tong was skilled and bold, she couldn't help but jump in fright when this zombie abruptly jumped out in front of her. Looking at this magnificent beauty up close truly made one's scalp tingle. Arbor reflexively summoned her ferrule, and with a thunderous strike, she directly smashed it on the zombie's head. Fangs had already grown out of this zombie's mouth, but its movements were still slow. Arbor's ferrule immediately smashed the zombie's head into mush. She pursed her lips and muttered to herself, "It's starting to mutate with fangs so soon." Fangs were the symbol of level 2 zombies. Not only did the zombie outbreak this time come early, but the mutation speed was also very shocking. In her previous life, some zombies only mutated to level 2 after at least 7 days of the outbreak. This time, the mutation truly caught people unprepared. Bypassing the completely dead zombie, Arbor walked into the secret room behind the moving wall. This was probably a storage room, and there were 2 zombies hiding in the corner. The 2 female zombies, whose original appearances couldn't be seen, pounced over. With bulging eyes, they charged at her from the front and back with malevolent expressions. Against a level 4 mystic cultivator, these 2 zombies were clearly not enough. After Arbor quickly dealt with them, she felt a bit disappointed and downcast. This should be the talisman shop owner's family of 3. After the zombie outbreak, the shop owner probably moved his wife and daughter into the secret room to take refuge. But one of the 3 must have been seriously injured and died not long after. After that, something heart-wrenching happened. The one who died lost her mind after the zombie transformation and personally killed the other 2 closest relatives. The originally happy family of 3 was completely broken up just like that. Arbor thought of her father, and the resentment and anger in her heart had already dissipated the moment she saw the zombie barge into her parents' dormitory to commit murder. Any resentment could vanish in the face of disaster and family. Compared to the miserable state of the talisman shop owner's family, Arbor truly felt that there was nothing better than having a whole family together. Speaking of which, her father was essentially kind. In the face of death, he would not hesitate to push her mother away. It was just that sometimes, he was too stupidly filial. He probably wouldn't be able to change it in this lifetime. Arbor walked around the storeroom and found 10 bags of rice and hundreds of fake talismans without talisman power. Naturally, she threw away the fake talismans and threw the rice into the paradise. Just as she was about to leave, the tip of her foot kicked a pitch-black wooden box. Arbor bent down to pick it up and opened it. His eyes lit up. Lying in the wooden box was an ordinary-looking jade tablet with the thickness of 3 fingers and about 300 blank talisman papers. She had worn out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. With these 300 blank talisman papers, she wouldn't have to worry about drawing more storage talismans. Arbor flipped the jade tablet over and over in her hand. She couldn't see anything special about it, so she simply threw it back into the box and threw it into the paradise together with the rice. After putting away the heart of paradise, Arbor stepped out of the talisman shop. The rain had stopped, and there was a trace of moisture in the air. Arbor turned around and looked at the family of 3, who made her sigh endlessly. She thought to herself, "I hope that in the next life, your family will be able to be together, safe and happy." "Help! Help!" Xiao Wenjuan's panic scream came from around the corner. Arbor looked over in annoyance. She saw Xiao Wenjuan rushing at the front, while the old lady stumbled and ran behind her. Behind them, there were more than 10 ferocious-looking zombies in hot pursuit. Arbor's eyes twitched. She found it funny. The mother and daughter of the Qiao family are here. Chapter 115. Looks like we didn't get to eat this meal. Arbor crossed his arms and slowly paced to his father's side, his tone carrying a hint of ridicule. Xiao Zhongbong didn't know what to say. He paced in a circle and casually grabbed a wooden stick from the side of the street, about to step forward alone to save the mother and daughter. Xiaomu rolled her eyes and sent a look to second uncle beside her. Second uncle hastily raised his arm to block Father Qiao's path. "Eldest brother, stay here. I'll go save them. Xiao Zhongbang's hand that gripped the wooden stick stiffened and turned white for a moment. Only then did he recall that he was no longer the high-spirited genius mystic cultivator youth from back then. Right now, he was nothing more than a cripple. Charging into a zombie horde was courting death. Xiao Zhongxing had already reached the third layer of body tempering, so dealing with these level 1 zombies was as easy as flipping his hand and finishing them off with one punch. Before long, he brought the disheveled mother and daughter back to the side of the carriage. At this time, elderly lady was already so frightened that her hands and feet were trembling, and she almost couldn't breathe properly. The mother and daughter's clothes, which had become wrinkled after a night of fleeing, were now even dirtier and more tattered. Their outer garments were clinging to their bodies by the zombies. Wei Ziqin walked down from the carriage and fetched some water for elderly lady to drink to calm her nerves. On the side, Xiao Wenwan rudely snatched the water sack from Wei Ziqin's hands and gulped down several large mouthfuls, unable to conceal the horror in her eyes. What exactly are those things? Why are there also these monsters in Anshan? Xiao Wenwan drank a few mouthfuls of water to calm herself down before starting to shriek. These things are zombies that mutated from corpses. Who told you that there are no zombies in Anshan? Xiao Zhongxing grumpily said, eldest brother already told you to stay behind, but you insisted on bringing mother to some restaurant. Oh, in other words, you all knew. Xiao Wenjuan's face contorted as she pointed at everyone and screamed at the top of her lungs. You knew there was danger, but you didn't tell us? You even watched as mother and I foolishly went to a restaurant. If you had told us earlier, we wouldn't have taken the risk. Xiao Zhongxing was so angry that he was amused. He wasn't good with words in the first place, so he was rendered speechless by Xiao Wenjuan's screams. Arbor stood to the side and glanced at his aunt who had flipped out. You were the one who wanted to go to the restaurant to eat, and you didn't listen to others. Instead, you hurriedly supported grandmother and left. Did you care about what others said? Shut up. Xiao Wenwan was exasperated. How dare you interrupt when adults are talking? There were no rules. That's what sister-in-law taught you. Wei Ziqin was so angry that her face turned pale. She grabbed Arbor's hand and said, Let's get in the car. Steamed buns. Where are the steamed buns from before? Hurry up and give them to us. Xiao Wenwan felt like she was about to starve to death. She turned her head and roared at the young maidservant who was standing at the side in a daze. Her arrogant attitude and matter-of-fact tone made it seem like she didn't realize how much trouble her foolish behavior had caused. Arbor's face instantly turned cold. He reached out to stop the young maidservant from subconsciously walking forward. His tone was bone-chilling. Do you think that this is still the peaceful era? That you're still the Qiao family's eldest miss who lived like a princess and didn't know the daily necessities of life? If you want food, you have to exchange it with equal labor. From today onward, this is my Arbor's rule. If you don't want to follow it, that's fine too. Arbor calmly looked at Xiao Wenwan, whose mouth was agape and didn't know how to react. Just get out of here. Chapter 116. What did you say? Xiao Wenjuan's eyes widened. She was so angry that her whole body trembled and her face turned purple. After a while, Xiao Wenjuan's lips trembled as she turned to look at Xiao Zhongbang, who was standing awkwardly on the side. Big brother, this is how your child treats me. I'm her aunt. She looked so wrong that she was about to cry. She was a completely different person from her earlier arrogant self. If you're so good at changing your face, why don't you just go to an opera troupe and sing? Xiao Mu beckoned at the little lass Xiao Yao, and the latter immediately followed after her eagerly. Son, mother can't live anymore. Old Lady Qiao was really crying this time. When those zombies chased after her, Old Lady Qiao felt that she would have been strangled to death if she had been one step slower. Not only had she not eaten anything since last night, but she had also been frightened and had been blown by the wind in the open carriage for an entire night. Ever since Old Lady Qiao became a widow, she had never suffered like this before. How could she not be sorrowful? Old Lady Qiao slapped her thigh and wailed, tears rolling down her cheeks. Her heart was filled with bitterness and resentment. She even secretly scolded her own daughter. If she had eaten a nice steamed bun, she would have been fine. Why did she have to smash the steamed bun on the ground and look for a restaurant? Mother. Xiao Zhongbang looked at his mother's tired and hungry appearance and couldn't bear it. He secretly glanced at Arbor, who had a long face. Jojo, grandmother is old. She can't go hungry. Mother will help her into the carriage and let Xiao Yao give her 2 steamed buns to eat. Okay? Wei Ziqin asked carefully. Okay. Arbor nodded and didn't object. To Qiao Mu, this was only a trivial matter, but the Qiao Zhongbang couple heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Arbor's eyes flashed and his heart warmed. He knew that his parents cared about him a lot. His parents were extremely filial people. It was absolutely impossible for them to abandon their mother and escape alone. As long as the old lady didn't make trouble for her, it wasn't like Xiaomu couldn't afford to give her a mouthful of food. She also didn't want her parents to be caught between their daughter and mother over such a small matter. Although deep in his heart, Arbor still didn't have the slightest good impression of the old lady, he was willing to try to accept this harsh and ungrateful old lady for his parents. Good girl, Wei Ziqin said with a gentle smile. She stepped forward to support the old lady, who had stopped crying and looked embarrassed. Xiao Zhongbang also smiled and said, Okay, let's get in the car. We have to get on the road quickly. We can't delay any longer. That's right. Let's hurry up and eat and get ready for the journey. Once we leave Anshan town and head south, it will probably take us a day and a night to reach the next town. Second Uncle Qiao jumped down from the carriage and said with a smile, All right, the carriage has been roughly repaired. Everyone, make do with it. Let's go. This time, no one had any objections, and they squeezed into the carriage one by one. Xiao Wenwan was the first to grab the most comfortable seat at the back of the carriage. She didn't even care about her mother. Wei Ziqin glanced at her but didn't say anything. After helping the old lady into her seat, she pulled her daughter to find a seat near the door. She then took out 2 steamed buns from the bag that Xiao Yao handed over and handed them to the old lady. Mother, eat some to fill your stomach first. We'll find a place to cook some hot soup pancakes for you at noon. The old lady nodded and reached out to take the steamed buns with a complicated expression. Xiao Wenwan hastily called out, Mother, I'm also hungry. Hurry and give me one. The old lady's lips trembled, and she gave her daughter a steamed bun without another word. Xiao Wenwan took it and started munching on it in large bites. Outside the carriage, Second Uncle Qiao raised his horsewhip and shouted as he drove the carriage toward the town exit. Xiao Zhongbang followed behind on horseback. Chapter 117. 3 adults and 4 children were squeezed into the small carriage. Occasionally, they would be able to stretch their limbs, but most of the time, everyone consciously sat with their bodies curled up. Other than Xiao Wenwan, she occupied the back of the car and sat comfortably. From time to time, she would pull open the curtains and look out of the car window. She kept letting out joyful cries. Look, we haven't seen any of those monsters on the way here. The hillside is covered in green grass and fragrant. I'm sure that Shangyang town is fine up ahead. Elderly lady had been tormented by the journey and was already drowsy. She was awakened by Qiao Wenjuan's startled cries, and a trace of annoyance appeared on her face. No one paid attention to her in the carriage. Arbor was already speechless towards this extremely naive youngest aunt. It turned out that she wasn't fleeing from disaster, but was on an outing. Looking at her simple-minded, cheerful appearance, it simply made people speechless. Xiao Wenwan put down the curtain and looked at everyone. Her 2 curved eyebrows wrinkled, and she sniffed hard. What's that smell? Youngest aunt, your body. It stinks. Xiao Lin-er, who was curled up in Wei Ziqin's arms, scrunched up her little face and vigorously fanned her chubby little hand, answering Qiao Wenjuan's previous question very well. Arbor was secretly amused, but his expression didn't change as he looked at Xiao Wenwan, whose face had turned the color of pig liver. After all, it was already the 7th month, and the weather was a bit stuffy at noon. The previous rain didn't bring about a comfortable feeling, but it made people feel even hotter after the rain. The air in this carriage didn't circulate well, and there were so many people squeezed in. They didn't notice it before, but after sitting for a long time and feeling stuffy, the smell came out. Xiao and Wan and elderly Lady Xiao had rolled in the rain before and were also visited by zombies, so the smell on their bodies definitely couldn't be any better. However, Xiao Lin's frank words were still quite funny. Xiao Mu secretly applauded her sister in her heart, and she sent Xiao Yao, who was beside her, a look. Xiao Yao immediately understood and nodded. It's not raining now. This servant will roll up the curtain to ventilate the air. Ventilate. Ventilate. Wind. Xiao Wenwan gritted her teeth. Was she that smelly? He even needed these people to open the curtains for ventilation. Xiao Wenwan angrily threw down the curtain in her hand and curled up in a corner to sulk by herself. At least her noisy voice was missing. The carriage stopped at the bottom of the hill. Second Uncle Xiao jumped off the carriage and shouted, "Let's rest for a bit and let the horses eat some grass before continuing." Second brother, you've worked hard. Wei Ziqin got off the carriage with a large cloth bag. You guys take a rest first. I'll cook some simple noodles for everyone. Okay. I'll go get some branches to start a fire. Xiao Hu carried the foodie out of the car, and the children sat by the side, waiting to eat. The little foodie's eyes followed her mother around. Wei Ziqin carried the package and went to work. She took out a pot and several bowls from the package. Xiao Wenwan followed her and looked at Wei Ziqin in confusion. Sister-in-law, why did you make so many preparations when you left in such a hurry? You even brought pots and pans? Oh, that's right. I'm used to it. Wei Ziqin's hand paused as she gave a perfunctory reply. Then, she turned and busied herself with making noodles. That's not it. Why didn't I see this package in the carriage earlier? Xiao Wenwan asked. Wei Ziqin didn't answer and reached out to push away the figure in front of her. Younger aunt, move over a bit. Don't get scalded by the hot soup. She had cut the noodles into slices and placed them in the storage talisman in small packets beforehand. Now, she just needed to use the package to take out a small packet from the talisman and directly cook it. Chapter 118. Soon, several bowls of piping hot noodles were ready. Xiao Wenjuan's pupils constricted as she watched her sister-in-law freely finish cooking the noodles and sprinkle seasonings into each small bowl according to her personal taste. There was definitely something strange about this woman. Putting aside the fact that she still had the time to clean up pots and pans while fleeing in the middle of the night, she actually carried seasonings like oil, salt, soy sauce, and vinegar with her. No matter how one looked at it, it was strange. Xiao Wenwan hesitantly sized up Wei Ziqin, but even if she racked her brains, she would never have thought that Wei Ziqin had a storage talisman on her. No one paid any attention to her questions. Everyone held their bowls and slurped down the noodles. Even elderly Lady Qiao's eyes revealed a trace of joy and gratitude. After being tormented for an entire day and night, they were suddenly able to hold a bowl of hot soup pancakes and eat it. How blissful was that? Xiao Wenwan swallowed a bowl of noodles without tasting the food. She pestered Xiao Wenwan and asked, "Sister-in-law, just tell me. This package was clearly not in the carriage just now. You must be seeing things. The package has always been there." Wei Ziqin pretended to be surprised and swept a glance at Xiao Wenwan before quickly turning around to clean up the bowls and chopsticks. Wei Ziqin was very clear about what kind of person her younger sister-in-law was, so she naturally would not reveal the storage talisman to Xiao Wenwan. The storage talisman was a magic weapon that her daughter gave her. Every time she thought about it, Wei Ziqin felt sweet in her heart. Xiao Wenwan stomped her feet and walked unwillingly to elderly Lady Qiao's side. She grabbed her mother's sleeve and shook it. "Mother, look at sister-in-law. She must be hiding something from us. Calm down. Right now, the most important thing is to quickly find a safe place to rest." Only now did old Lady Qiao realize that she had spoiled her daughter too much. Xiao Wenwan pursed her lips. When she saw that her mother did not help her reprimand her sister-in-law, she could only give in. However, she was rather angry in her heart, thinking that her sister-in-law definitely had a secret. Everyone rested for less than an hour. Because they were in a hurry to settle down in Shiju City, they decided to get on the carriage and continue their journey. Arbor waited for everyone to get on the bus before he was ready to jump in. However, he heard a familiar chirping sound. At first, she thought she was hearing things, so she retracted her small foot and stuck her small head out to look at the back of the carriage. However, Xiao Mu's eyes suddenly turned round, and she quickly jumped into the carriage without another word. She pulled the curtain and yelled, "Second uncle, let's go quickly." Second Uncle Qiao panicked. Our dear Qiao Mu's anxious tone truly made Second Uncle Qiao misunderstand that a large group of zombies had caught up to them. Without another word, he didn't even have time to look back before he whipped his horse and hurriedly drove the carriage away. Xiao Zhongbong hurriedly followed on horseback. What's wrong? Another batch of zombies is coming? I don't know. Second Uncle Qiao drove the carriage with all his heart and did his best to whip the horse. He felt that his back was drenched in cold sweat. Jojo said to leave quickly, so the situation must be bad. Chirp. When the little white squirrel saw that the carriage was moving quickly and that the distance between it and its master seemed to be increasing, it hurriedly transformed into a ball of white light. Like a bolt of lightning, it scuttled across the hillside and dashed straight to the roof of the carriage. Arbor collapsed beside his mother and patted his small chest with one hand. Holy shit, I think I saw that poisonous squirrel in the mystic realm just now. Chirp. A ball of white light fell from the roof of the carriage and directly pounced on Xiao Mu's face. Xiao Mu immediately gnawed on a mouthful of white fur. Her small nose was filled with the fur of a certain creature. She was so angry that her small face was suddenly covered in a layer of green paint. Chapter 119. Scram. Arbor angrily rebuked and unceremoniously pulled the little squirrel off his face. Then, without even looking at the tears in the little guy's beady eyes, he swung his hand and flung a certain squirrel out of the car roof that had another hole in it. The people in the carriage, old and young, were all silent as they stared dumbfoundedly at little Qiao. Such a cute little fellow. You actually treat it like this? Xiao Wenwan shrieked. Squeak. The little white squirrel persevered and suddenly broke through the wall of the carriage. However, half of its chubby body was stuck in the carriage, while the other half was stuck outside. Its little furry head rested on Arbor's shoulder as it looked at its little master with teary eyes. The corner of Arbor's mouth twitched involuntarily. Arbor didn't know whether to laugh or be angry at its stupidity as it shook its round body and tried to pull itself out of the hole. Squeak. The little white squirrel revealed a human-like, pitiful expression, begging for help. Arbor extended a thin finger and poked its chubby body. Squeak. Its little master didn't seem to like it very much. It was begging for comfort. I'll help you. Xiao Wenwan squeezed over from the corner of the carriage and chuckled as she lifted her hand to pick up the little white squirrel. Squeak. The originally cute little furry face suddenly turned ruthless and revealed a fierce gaze. Before Xiao Wenwan could react, it bit down hard on her outstretched hand. Xiao Wenwan fell down with a gurgle, and a layer of turmeric quickly spread across her face. Wanner. Old Madam jumped in fright and rushed forward to check on her daughter. She turned her head and angrily shouted at Arbor. What did you do to your little aunt? Arbor pulled the little white squirrel out of the hole in the carriage wall and expressionlessly looked at Old Madam. I bit her. Old Madam Qiao immediately choked. How long will she lie down? Arbor could tell that the white squirrel's bite this time was slightly different from before. Previously, in the mystic realm, those who were bitten by it had all died on the spot. This time, Xiao Wenwan just lay there motionless, but her eyes were still moving, but her face was full of fear, as if she would faint at any time. Creak! Arbor stretched out one finger after another. When he reached the third finger, he asked, 3 hours? The little white squirrel nodded repeatedly with an adorable expression. Arbor was satisfied. He nodded and said, We can have peace until the night. Without Xiao Wenjuan's nagging, this was pretty good. You can leave now. Knowing that the little white squirrel could understand its words, Arbor put its round body down and poked it with its little hand. Squeak! The little white squirrel hurriedly pounced onto Arbor's body, rolling on the ground and begging for shelter. I can't protect too many people, Arbor said calmly. Squeak! The little white squirrel immediately jumped up and shook its short limbs, energetically performing a set of punches and kicks. It indicated that it was very strong and didn't need protection. Moreover, it could protect others. Its silly look made Wei Ziqin and the others want to laugh. Big sister, it's so fun. Jolin suddenly stretched out her little paw to touch it, giving Wei Ziqin a fright. Arbor glanced at the little white squirrel, whose eyes were glowing fiercely again. Don't bite. The little white squirrel shrunk its tail and pathetically stopped moving. Jolin hugged its round little body and exclaimed happily, Sister, it's so fun. It's fun. Arbor shook his head helplessly. Suddenly, he thought of something, and his brows twitched slightly. Chapter 120. Old Madam suddenly shouted, Arbor, why aren't you saving your little aunt? Whoever bites her will save her. Arbor's words rendered Old Madam speechless. At this time, Qiao Zhongxing also discovered that no zombies had chased after them. Second Uncle Qiao, who was covered in cold sweat, helplessly looked at the child who jumped out of the car. This little scoundrel, can't he speak clearly? This problem of speaking lazily needs to be cured. Second uncle, wait for me. Xiao Mu walked a bit further away with the little white squirrel in her arms before squatting down and poking its chubby body. Can you enter the paradise? Seeing the white squirrel, she recalled that all living creatures, including herself, couldn't enter the paradise. But there were fish in the paradise's small lake. This meant that it wasn't true that the paradise didn't contain living creatures, but that it didn't accept living creatures from the outside. However, the little white squirrel truly belonged to the paradise, although it was a bit strange why it existed in the paradise in the first place. Squeak. Chirp. You're a squirrel, not a bird. Don't keep making nondescript bird sounds. Arbor poked it again. Can you mine magnetite? Can you extract magnetite from the mine? The little girl didn't feel guilty when she said this. One had to know that extracting magnetite from ores was a technical job. Many artificers worked day and night to extract the magnetite. Furthermore, the amount of magnetite extracted was pitifully small. It was unknown how much magnetite was lost in the process. This little guy was actually nagging at a white squirrel, and the strange thing was that the white squirrel even reacted by nodding furiously. Master, master, I'm useful. This was the meaning in the adorable black beady eyes. Stay up late. Little master, don't worry. No mystic cultivators are passing by. Stay up late, said the moment he appeared. Arbor nodded in disgust with the wilted sapling. He sighed and took out the heart of paradise. A white light flashed. As expected, the little white squirrel entered the translucent valley without any hindrance. Arbor's eyes flickered as he watched the little white squirrel scurry into the magnetite mine at an extremely fast speed. The little white figure disappeared in a flash. Arbor thought that it would take some effort for this little thing to come out. After all, it was such a big mountain. It would take some time for her to go in and mine a piece of magnetite. Unexpectedly, just as he was about to put away the heart of paradise, the white figure suddenly appeared in a flash. The little white squirrel was holding a spherical ore in its two short claws. Chirp, chirp, chirp. The little white squirrel sat in Arbor's arms and extended its two tiny claws to peel off the outer layer of the ore. He was really peeling it like peeling a banana. Arbor wasn't the only one who was dumbfounded. Stay up late, who was watching from the side, was speechless. When did the outer skin of the magnetite mine become as soft as a banana peel? Didn't they have to rely on the craftsmen to slowly chisel it with tools? Soon, a pitch-black, almost transparent stone with a hint of emerald color faintly visible at its core appeared in Xiao Mu's palm. Huh! This piece of black stone was actually so bright and black, and there was even a bit of jade floating in it. He had never seen it before. Arbor held it in his hands and looked at it over and over again. Stay up late, who was standing on the side, was so excited that he could barely speak properly. Yes, yes. It's a high-grade magnetite. Little master, a high-grade magnetite? And it was such a big piece, about the size of 2.5 adults' palms. According to the size of magnetite sold in normal magnetite stores, this piece of magnetite could be cut into at least 10 pieces of high-grade magnetite. Of course, it was guaranteed that each piece would be sold at a sky-high price. Even Stay Up Late, who had seen a lot in Guanlan City, was so excited when he saw such a large piece of high-grade magnetite that he almost couldn't speak properly. It was obvious how rare this item was. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.